Friends, overtime is back here on 95.7 The Game. A disappointing game for the San Francisco 49ers. They fall in Vegas 34-7. Of course, though, in the preseason, there's so much more that matters than the final score. You're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. My name's Mark Randy. Sterling Bennett with me as well. Craig Valentino behind the glass running things. A lot to get into, Sterling. First of all, football's back. It feels great. I know we'll get into the game.
It feels awful right now.
Yeah, not the best showing for the 49ers team-wise. There certainly are some positives that we'll get into, but it's just nice to finally have Niners football to react to once again.
7 months of torture is finally over, albeit maybe have restarted today, losing to Las Vegas, but I'll just say this. This may have been the most disappointed I've ever been in a preseason game in my entire life.
Wow.
Watching that performance by San Francisco, I don't care if it's the backups or not, 34-7, and it wasn't just the box score. It was almost every single play. It was like, oh no, play's over. Like, everything was awful for San Francisco today.
Yeah, it was. All right, so we want you to be a part of this show. You're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. You can give us a call, 888-957-9570. We want to hear from you. We're on until 7. Get in now. Get in often. It should be a lot of fun. You can also hit us up on the Xfinity Mobile text line, which is also 888-957-9570. You can chat with us on YouTube and on Twitch. Head to youtube.com/957 The Game, twitch.tv/957 The Game. We're monitoring it all. Lots of ways that you can get in touch with us. But Sterling, let's just begin with the quarterbacks. That's obviously the biggest story. Brock Purdy, as expected, did not play today. There's a chance he plays in future preseason games, but we didn't see him today as expected. Trey Lance got the start, played the entire first half, and then it was Sam Darnold for all of the third quarter, a bit into the fourth before Brandon Allen came in. But let's start with Trey Lance. He had, again, the entire first half, finished 10 of 15, 112 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. So if you're just looking at the box score, you might feel like, hey, he had a pretty good day. I know you and I both don't agree. He did not look very good, especially early. And there were some other issues. Offensive line didn't do him favors early, but perhaps not the best day for Trey Lance today.
And you want to give him credit, too, because there were some good things he did. He avoided pressure a few times, scrambled for a 2-yard gain to get out of a sack, had a nice play to Willie Snead up the middle where he's running to the line of scrimmage and kind of flips it to him for a first down. So there was some nice plays Trey Lance did make, but was overwhelmingly negative for him. For a player there's been so much hype around in regards to, former third overall pick, traded 3 first-round draft picks for him, finally getting back on the field. Didn't really lose his starting quarterback job because of how bad he played, because he got hurt last year. And this was an opportunity for him to really show the audience, the fans, the entire NFL world what I've been working on the entire offseason, what I've been showing the fans and media in camp. Because the Trey Lance we saw today was not the same player I've seen the past month and a half at training camp.
Yeah.
This looked like the Trey Lance 3 years ago against Kansas City in his first game ever. Like, this looked like a shell of what Trey Lance has shown the past week. And to see him go out there and, again, 10 of 15, 1 touchdown, that looks great. But in reality, you're sitting there like, no, this was quarterback 3, rookie, raw, green behind the ears Trey Lance again, and you cannot leave thinking positive thoughts about him, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. So, 10 of 15, 112, a touchdown, no interceptions. His rating, 111. So it all looks great. But let's dive into some of the things that did go wrong. I mean, the first 3 drives, the 49ers don't get a first down. First drive, a quick drop. He's looking to hit a slant or maybe a quick out to a tight end. Didn't get rid of the ball. He got sacked, and this is where the offensive line wasn't playing well either. Second play had a nice completion to Ross Dwelly, who's fighting for a tight end spot on this roster, about 7 yards. Third play drops back to pass. He had Ross Dwelly near the sticks. For whatever reason, didn't throw the ball, got sacked, 3 and out. Similar story on the second drive. They did mix in a run, also a PA boot on a play action for Trey Lance. Couldn't really get much going, 3 and out there. Third drive, also a 3 and out. He missed a throw to the sideline. Jason Poe on the offensive line just got absolutely demolished. They were not helping him at all. But those first 3 drives, hard to find something that could have gone worse for Trey Lance and the Niners offense on those 3 drives. He did stack some good plays together coming up after that, but those first 3 drives, again, no help from the offensive line. but Trey Lance seemed flustered. You're right. It seemed like this was a guy who was just picked this offseason. Looked like he was a rookie coming into his first ever preseason game. And for a guy who's coming off of it really a normal offseason.
Yeah.
Healthy really the entire offseason. Played a lot, with, his personal quarterback coach, Jeff Christensen. Of course, all available at OTAs and all of that. And here in training camp, of course, not getting all of the snaps, at least first team snaps in training camp. But this is a relatively regular, straightforward, normal offseason for Trey Lance. And those first 3 drives, my goodness, they were not pretty.
Those first 3 drives, 1 minute, 49 seconds, 1 minute, 19 seconds, 1 minute, 5 seconds, no first down, and 3 sacks. Yes, the offensive line, that second-team offensive line was atrocious today. But we did see a difference when Sam Darnold came out there hitting guys in stride, anticipating Trey Lance. I know it's one preseason game, and you can be a really good practice player and struggle come game day. I don't know if that's him, but today there was a lack of anticipation. There was easily rattled in the pocket. When pressure came, while there was some nice plays, it seemed like it was almost like he was seeing ghosts, unlike Sam Darnold earlier today. And to see him go out there and be hesitant, to not be decisive with the football, if you're going to play in this offense, you have to go through your progressions quickly in a snap of a finger. Today he wasn't that. He seemed like someone who was trying to learn the offense still. You've had 3 years to figure this out, and I get it. Again, offensive line plays bad. You have to maneuver in the pocket and find out things, and plays break down. I get that. And the Raiders would seemingly game plan for this preseason game, but for a quarterback to come in, been here 3 years with the offensive artillery he has in his physical traits, there was none of that on display today. None of that. There wasn't a 75-yard touchdown bomb, but he's 3 for 9, and you go, okay, there was some good, but a lot of bad. It was a whole lot of bad, and a whole lot of bad on top of the bad that was already out there.
Yeah, and then I think what makes it even a little more difficult to swallow if you're a 49er fan is you were watching what Aiden O'Connell, relative unknown at the quarterback position, was doing on the other side of the football. Not going to pretend like I think he's anything special in this league out of Purdue, but I mean, he was 15 of 18, 141, a touchdown, was really, really effective, and the Niners defense wasn't great either. We'll get into that a little bit later, but when you just see your star, or who you hoped was going to be a star quarterback, the franchise savior, the guy that you were going to win Super Bowls with, look relatively, iffy at best, and then you see this guy, Aiden O'Connell, come out and slinging the ball all over the place. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to swallow because the Niners have just been searching for their quarterback for so long, and you ultimately hope that Brock Purdy is that guy, and I don't want to overreact to just one preseason game, one half of a preseason game for Trey Lance, but the more that you see him in game action, you lose a little bit of confidence. You lose a little bit of belief that this could be a guy in the future.
Well, the wonder we had about him of what could he be? Oh, Trent Sherfield, first pass, boom, touchdown, 75 yards. It's kind of dwindled as he's played throughout his career. Against Arizona, rough first start. He has the finger broken. Then he plays Houston, has a bad first half, bounces back. Then last year in Chicago, monsoon. There's so many excuses built up against Trey Lance. So you can go, okay, I'll give you that. But we are seeing Trey Lance in the past 3 years. Every time he plays, or almost every time he plays, the magic wears off every single time. And it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And we're sitting here saying, hey, are you this team's third best quarterback? Are you this team's fourth best quarterback? Oof. And I think Kyle Shanahan's sitting here saying, I don't even know who Trey Lance is because he's yet to show me.
Yeah. We got a couple comments here coming in on the YouTube chat. Michael for $2 saying, we have a quarterback crisis after Purdy. Kicker also a problem. We'll get into the kicker. Jake Moody missed a couple of field goals today. If that doesn't work out, Kyle Shanahan's never going to hear the end of that, by the way.
If you miss on your trading 3 first-round draft picks for a quarterback in Trey Lance and missing on a third-round pick for a kicker, it's a lot of explaining to do for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of comments as well on YouTube and on the text line, the Xfinity Mobile text line. Again, you can let us know your thoughts, 888-957-9570. Also, shout out to the YouTube and chat watchers as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. A lot of people saying, well, it's just preseason. This doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I don't know what you feel about that. Like, if Trey Lance was my team's starting quarterback and he doesn't have the burden of trying to compete for a spot on the roster. If he was locked in, he's the team's starting quarterback. Okay, I agree. this doesn't really matter all that much. But this is a guy who is, you mentioned, fighting for his spot on this team. This matters. This is not just, you can throw it away. It's not that big of a deal. Obviously, you look at like one individual play, like, he made a bad read there. Okay, whatever. You can move off of one play. Not a big deal. But when you consider everything that's going into this isn't Trey Lance trying to win the starting job. That's Brock Purdy's. That's not even a competition. He's trying to win the 2, as you said. And if he doesn't win the 2, he's trying to be the 3. If not, he's not on this roster. This matters for Trey Lance. Nothing in his professional career has ever mattered more than this moment. He's been guaranteed roster spots. Last year, he was guaranteed the starting job. The idea that this somehow doesn't matter for Trey Lance, I'm sorry, I disagree wholeheartedly. This is the most important moment in Trey Lance's career, and if he doesn't take advantage, his days in the red and gold might be numbered.
Well, that's the thing, is there was a practice earlier in training camp where I think the cumulative effort of the media said, Trey can come out today and really prove a point and separate himself from Sam Darnold in the quarterback 2 conversation. Trey Lance had that opportunity today. Come out, start this game out strong, and make a statement saying, hey, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and remind Kyle Shanahan, you traded 3 first-round draft picks for me for a reason. Whether I'm your starting quarterback this year or not, if Brock Purdy goes down in any capacity, you can trust me. There is no way I left this game saying, hey, Brock Purdy goes down, they got Trey Lance. It's like, oh my God, we have Trey Lance. Like, who is he? And right now, I would not feel comfortable with him being this team's quarterback at all. There's small glimpses of hope. A couple of times avoiding pressure, avoiding sacks, making some nice short throws. But there's still, easy, this kind of dump-offs he's missing. Guys on the outs with separation he's missing for 5 yards. There's throws he's not making that Shanahan's dialing up, timing routes for first downs. He's just like, no, I'm holding the football too long. Some of the sacks today weren't the offensive line's fault. Some were, by all means, some were. But there were some plays where Trey Lance looks hesitant in an offense determined by timing. And so for Trey Lance to come out and struggle with the timing, be hesitant, you have to ask yourself, not only can Trey Lance play in the NFL, but can he play in the offense? I don't know. And that's not where I was last year or 2 years ago, but it's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. All right, let's take a listen to one of the highlights from this game. It's kind of a funny one, and it's just a result of what the play was. One of the positives for Trey Lance was that 4th drive. They moved the ball down the field after 3 consecutive 3-and-outs to start the game. He made some nice throws. He had one where he was evading pressure, stepped up to the line of scrimmage, looked like he was going to take off and maybe get 5-6 yards if he broke a tackle, and then ultimately he kind of threw a jump pass behind across his body.
Doing a Tebow.
Yeah, it was honestly a pretty nice play. A good amount of improvisation from Trey Lance there. They get down near the end zone. They ultimately get to the 9-yard line, and then this happens. Yeah, and that was Jason Horowitz on the call for the Raiders side of things. And yeah, it was a play action, a boot to the left. There was a defender racing into Trey Lance's face. He had Chris Conley, the intended wide receiver, who I think overall had a pretty good game, specifically in the first half. He had him in the back of the end zone, and you could see him. He's open for quite a while, but the way that Lance was rolling to his left, it's awkward for a right-handed quarterback to kind of get that throw off. You have to set your feet and then throw. By the time he did it, it was too late. It got deflected, should have been intercepted, ultimately falls into the arms of Ross Dwelley for a touchdown. But that was, after what I thought was a really good drive for Trey Lance, instead of the cherry on top, I mean, it was the worst possible thing you could have had at the end of that drive, because he got into a bit of a rhythm. You could feel him building a little bit of momentum. Things were looking up after 3 straight 3-and-outs, and then he makes just a bad decision on the throw. It was also a little behind him, allowed the cornerback to catch back up to Chris Conley and knock it away. That was not a very good throw by Trey Lance.
Well, that goes back to the inconsistencies he's had since he's got here. And you would like to think over 3 years and 3 off seasons that those things would clear themselves up with more play, with more reps. Those would go away, and for all intents and purposes, they had during training camp, they had during practice, but the lights come on, you're playing live action against an opponent who, by all means, the Raiders, again, seem to have game plan for this game, but for an opposing team, they want to prove a point too, that you're the NFC or thought to be NFC championship favorites coming into this year. Jimmy Garoppolo is now our starting quarterback. We want to go out there and beat the Niners for Jimmy Garoppolo. Come in here. They want to win a job too.
Yeah.
And for Trey Lance to come out here, you cannot tell me they didn't want to make Trey Lance look a little foolish. Young quarterback fighting for a job still, heralded as the next guy in San Francisco. Come out, rattle him early, and they did. Come out here and force him to make some good throws, and he couldn't. And for Trey Lance to still have the inconsistencies, to be a little gun shy, like you cannot do that in this offense. To have in the NFL, timing is 1-2 seconds, and if you don't hit it, you don't get it, right? For Trey Lance, it seems like he's waiting for guys to get open instead of throwing them open. You can't do that in the NFL. This isn't college where guys are open 15 yards and they're wide open for a touchdown. This is guys are going to hit little small windows, and you have to be right on the money. Jimmy, for all the bad things he did, he was great at that stuff. Sam Darnold, for all the bad he's done, he looked pretty good doing that stuff today and good during training camp. Trey Lance still seems like that young college quarterback who, hey, the guy's wide open in the bubble of the defense, and I can hit him, but I can't throw guys open yet. And I'm sure Shanahan's sitting there saying, I don't know if I can play you. Because that's going to cost us in a big game this year.
Yeah, it's tough. You're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. The Raiders beat the Niners 34-7 in preseason game number 1. Obviously, final score doesn't really matter all that much, but not a ton of positives specifically for Trey Lance. What do you think? Give us a call, 888-957-9570. Again, 888-957-9570. Did you lose some confidence in Trey Lance today? Only a half of football, but did you lose some confidence? Because I think for me, I did a little bit. I don't know exactly what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting him to come out and, be 12 of 13 for 152 touchdowns and no turnover-worthy plays and make every right decision. But I was expecting it to look and feel a little smoother than this. Something you said early. It felt like he was in his first ever preseason game. It felt like this was all new to him, but it's not new to him. And the fact that it still feels that way is extremely concerning, because you just have to wonder, where has this guy taken a step forward in his time with the 49ers? And I don't know if, you share blame with the coaching staff or whatever, but it just seems like this guy, and I know he's had all these injuries and he missed all of last year, and he's run into some really bad luck in that regard as well. But it's just hard to pinpoint where this guy has gotten better over the last 2.5 years.
Do you buy into the fact that he hadn't played since week 2 in the first quarter, and now it's been, almost a whole entire year since then, if not over a year?
I mean, I buy into it in the sense that maybe there's a little bit of nerves coming into a game, but I think once you get in there and after a drive, maybe after 2 drives, I think that kind of thing could subside. I mean, he's played injury-free football for this entire offseason. I know it's not in an NFL game, and a preseason game is even more than you can simulate in practice. But no, I don't really buy into that much. Again, maybe there's some nerves, maybe there's a little bit of rust to shake off, but you should be able to get rid of that relatively quickly, I think.
We would think after those first 3 drives of a minute, right, that he'd kind of figure things out, settle in, they give him some easy passes.
He did a little bit.
And we saw that in that drive where it almost ended with a pick, but became a touchdown. But even later, after that, Trey Lance said in his first game against the Texans, or, the second game with the Texans they played in 2021, that, I needed that first touchdown to kind of settle me down. And in this game, you'd think, okay, I got lucky, didn't throw a pick in the red zone, Dwelly saved my life there with a touchdown. I was wondering, okay, is he going to settle down here and figure things out? But even later, as his time progressed on the field, there was an interception almost early or later to a linebacker where he said, okay, like all the good you've built up trying to bounce back from a rough start falls right back down into a hole where you said you're almost throwing a second pick. And again, kind of to your point, it's like, where has Trey Lance gotten better? And on the field in practice, he has a lot. But when the bright lights are on and there's pressure in his face, he looks like that same guy from 3 years ago.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the phones to see a couple of you lining up. You can get in 888-957-9570. That's also the Xfinity mobile text line. Let us know what you think. Where has Trey Lance gotten better over the last 2.5 years? Did you lose some faith, some confidence in Trey Lance and his ability to be a quarterback for this team after what you saw today? Up first is Joe in San Francisco. You want to talk about Trey. Joe, what's up? You're on Overtime on 95.7 The Game.
Hey, guys. Happy, beautiful Sunday here in the city.
Nice, Joe.
Let me first premise this. I said that when Trey was preface this. When Trey was drafted, I was stoked. I was like, this is it. This is the direction. I would have given him the first, to start, right from the bat, the whole thing. But oh my word, no. I hear about this new motion, this new delivery he's got, and he overthrows with Dwelly going out of bounds like he's done a million times before. But let's just be honest. The offense looks like in constant staccato mode. His pockets are turbulent. Nothing is smooth with this. And I'm seeing no progress. And I see Darnold making, passes that if Trey made would be like, see, look at the progress he's making. No, it's not happening. And this, I think, is going to be this is like a James Wiseman moment for the Warriors when they realize this guy is not going to be able to do it. I don't see the progress. I don't see anything smooth. He had almost 2 picks. The accuracy is not there. And I'll just leave it at this, there's some things you've got to be able to hit. There are physical plays and mental plays. Yes, as a young guy, you think he's going to slowly develop experience and savvy, but some physical plays of timing and anticipation, that it's just not there. And I think that Kyle realized this and wants Darnold to be the number 2 and Allen the number 3 and somehow move off of him in a respectful way. What do you guys think?
Yeah, appreciate that, Joe. Thanks so much for calling in. Again, this is Overtime on 95.7 The Game, 888-957-9570. Something Joe said at the end there kind of stuck with me, Sterling. I think is what he said. I think Kyle Shanahan wants Sam Darnold to be the number 2. I don't think that's what he wants. No. I think he wants Trey Lance to earn that job and be the number 2. But if this performance is who Trey Lance is, he's leaving Kyle Shanahan no choice. Kyle Shanahan wants the guy that he picked 3rd overall, that he hand-selected. He wants him to be his guy. But it just doesn't seem like that's happening. We can talk about Sam Darnold in a little bit as well. But if this is the way it's going, there's no choice that Kyle Shanahan has to make. It might become relatively obvious.
Well, I think this problem dates back to even last year, where they wanted Trey Lance to take that next step in year 2, and
they so wanted him
and progress and be that the Mahomes, the franchise quarterback they drafted with the 3rd overall pick. But then they get into training camp, and he's struggling somewhat with the same issues he had in his rookie year. And there's certain things they go, we're not too sure about this guy. Then they go, well, hey Jimmy, you're still in the building. We'll bring you back again, and kind of hedge their bets with Trey. And now, the plan wasn't for Trey to get hurt, but they made the right decision bringing back Jimmy Garoppolo. This year, although different situations for Trey Lance, he isn't the so-called starting quarterback, but they're kind of hedging of like, Trey, we want you to be the guy, but if you continue to show what you haven't been able to and falter in being the quarterback we want you to be and hitting the easy throws and going through your progressions and being on time with your throws, we got Sam Darnold here, and he can be our quarterback too, and we're just okay with Sam being our number 2 quarterback. Trey, we want you to be the guy. We're going to give you the opportunity to be the guy, but you failed already last year. Unfortunately, it may not be 3 strikes and you're out for Trey. It might be 2, and I think he's leaning on that last leg right now.
Yeah, let us know what you think. 888-957-9570. You're listening to Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Sterling Bennett, Mark Randy with you. Could you just imagine just for a second how this might play out? Say Trey Lance, it continues down this spiral downward, and he never quite becomes the guy that he was expected to be. Now, maybe he goes somewhere else, and I don't know, maybe it doesn't pan out there either. Yeah. But regardless, whether he does good somewhere else or he doesn't and he never becomes the guy, that's just a knock on Kyle Shanahan and this front office's ability to figure out who is the guy to lead this franchise. I mean, they had the pick of the litter, aside, obviously, from Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. And I don't mean to bring up the draft in the sense that argue about a wrong pick.
Right.
But regardless of how this works out, assuming that it's not going to happen here, it's a stain on Kyle Shanahan for the rest of his career here.
It is, but only because of who they could have picked instead. Micah Parsons being there, being kind of the one guy you point to and say, Parsons and Nick Bosa, oh my goodness. But this falls down on the process. The knock is on the process they have at quarterback. And I do think Kyle Shanahan got a little overzealous saying, I can get this young, raw, moldable piece of clay in Trey Lance and make him to the quarterback I want him to be. And Trey was like, I can't do that. That's not who I am as a quarterback. And maybe I'm not built for that. And then lo and behold, Brock Purdy is this, perfect amalgamation of who Shanahan wants a quarterback. He's kind of a Kirk Cousins light with a little more mobility, right? And Shanahan sitting there like, yes, this is the guy. Yes, that's the guy I want.
Sign me up.
Exactly. And for him to sit back and go, oh well, Trey's also still here, and what do I do with him? I think for Kyle Shanahan, is it a knock on him? Sure, but I think for Kyle, it's getting to a point where either rip the Band-Aid off or just say he's quarterback 3 and just deal with it. Yeah. Like, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We got a couple of calls lining up. Let's go to one here before we hit a quick break. Joe in Alameda, you want to talk about Trey Lance. What did you see, Joe, from Trey Lance today in the preseason?
Yeah, man. Today was unfortunate. Seeing Trey struggle like that, especially with all the reports in the offseason about him, working with Mahomes and, trying to improve things. Look, the point of it is right now, I think for the 49ers faithful, is we got to rally behind Brock. Trey's reluctant to get the ball out quick to people who are actually open, and he's pulling the ball back down and doesn't really show the elusiveness or even the consciousness to escape the pocket safely, which is something that we definitely saw from Brock Purdy last year. So I wanted to see Lance dance and all of these things, man, but it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. So bang, bang, Niner gang, we got to rally behind Brock, man.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. Hey, good call. If you want to get in line, we're about to hit a break here, but you can get in line now. 888-957-9570. That is also the Xfinity mobile text line. I want to talk about something Joe mentioned on the other side. One of Trey Lance's quote-unquote, one of his better attributes. We can talk about that coming up because I thought what I saw from Sam Darnold, maybe he's a little bit better at something that we all think Trey Lance is better at. We can hit on that on the other side. We'll talk a lot more about this game. Raiders beat the Niners 34-7 in preseason week 1. We'll dive more into the quarterbacks, and of course, we're on until 7. Plenty of time to get to everything here after preseason game number 1 for the 49ers. Again, get in line, 888-957-9570. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. It's overtime. We're back with more right after this on 95.7 The Game.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years? Like one of the...
ride to 323232. Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls you for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job. I mean, coming in the second half, and you're in there with 2/3s on the O-line. Same with, the receivers and everything. So, we wanted to be careful with Sam for that reason, but we also wanted him to play too. So it was nice to be able to get Trey the whole first half, get Sam a little bit. Hopefully Sam will get a little bit more time next week.
All right, that was Kyle Shanahan talking about his two main quarterbacks that played in this preseason game. You're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Grandy, Sterling Bennett with you. The number, if you want to call in, let us know what you thought about Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, or really any part of this game. And there is a lot to talk about. It wasn't the prettiest game for the 49ers. Again, the final score 34-7. We care a little bit less about the result and more about individual performances here in the preseason. But the number, 888-957-9570. That's also the Xfinity mobile text line. You can also let us know your thoughts on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/957thegame, or on Twitch, twitch.tv/957thegame. We will get all your comments on all of those places. But something that we were talking about just before we went to break, Sterling, and something we were talking about a little during the break, is Trey Lance. The moment he was drafted, one of his strengths was his legs. I mean, he dominated with his legs at North Dakota State. And you watch all of those highlights, and it's just him running over tacklers, running past guys, scoring a lot of touchdowns with his legs. And it was just assumed, I think, that was going to translate to the next level, to the NFL. I know there are a lot of Niner fans who like to compare him to, he's the next Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen had a really rough rookie year, but he played. That's one
very raw talent quarterback as well.
100%. And other Niner fans who may be hoping, maybe he could be the next Lamar Jackson, all right?
That's Kyle Shanahan's fault. He said, I want Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson combined in the one quarterback, and he goes, give me Trey Lance.
Exactly.
And you go, okay, well, that's not who he is.
Exactly. And obviously he picked Trey Lance over Justin Fields, who's maybe the more normal comp for Lamar Jackson. That's a conversation for a different day. But my point is, it was just assumed that one of his strengths was going to be his leg, his ability to extend plays, to use his legs to get a ball down the field where perhaps a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't, to also gain yards with his legs and move the chains. We also saw it in his rookie year. It was the Sunday night game against the Green Bay Packers where he came in the final play of the first half and got into the end zone. And that was the team's, I think, their first points in that entire half. So it was just a thought, a given that was going to be a strength. Something that stood out to me today, Sterling, from this game, Trey Lance played the entire first half. Stats looked decent, 10 of 15, 112 and a touchdown, no interceptions. That 0 in the interception column is a lie. We'll get into why. It should be a 2. But I always thought that a strength is going to be this dude's legs. And he cannot run away from defensive ends. No. How many times did reserve defensive ends for the Las Vegas Raiders, at the very least, stay even with Trey Lance as he's scrambling out of the pocket? Sometimes they would catch up to him and catch him and bring him down from behind. This guy isn't, and I know it's been a talking point in the past, but we saw it again today. He's just simply not as quick and as explosive with his legs as I think we all assumed he was going to be when he was drafted 3rd overall.
It's almost like, just like him throwing, he gets caught in between of should I run or should I stay in the pocket? And I think for him, those are still things you would like to think would come with experience, but he doesn't have that luxury anymore. He had that in 2021, second team reps, be the scout team quarterback against the number 1 defense in the NFL and kind of find your footing as you progress in your rookie year. Come year 2, I get he lost it because he got hurt. But right now in year 3, Trey Lance, it's almost like he keeps finding himself in between. There was a play today where he ran for 2 yards, got out of the way of a defender, but he kept his eyes downfield. I like that stuff. He's looking for a big play. But there were other plays on the 4 sacks he had where either he's getting swallowed by the entire defensive line because the offensive line sucked, to be frank. But then there are other plays where he should be just tuck it and run. Get out of the pocket and give me a yard. Give me something positive. But he's running to his side trying to throw still. And I like that that's where his head's at. But sometimes when you watch Lamar Jackson, you watch Josh Allen, the guys who you're supposed to be
Jalen
like,
Hurts.
Right, Justin Fields, the guys who you're supposed to be, they sense pressure and say, nope, get out of Dodge. He's like, what do I do? Should I throw? Should I pass? Should I run? I have no idea what I should do. And that, again, it catches him in between so much where it's sack, done, and plays over with, turnover on downs, and punt. And in this offense, Kyle Shanahan himself would rather you just throw it away, throw it to a guy's knees, throw it to a guy's ankles, just incomplete the pass, and don't get a sack. But Trey, there was a play today. He held the football for 5 seconds. You can never do that in the NFL in the pocket. You are going to get hit by somebody, especially with the second-team offensive line in front of you playing so poorly. Like, Trey Lance has to be more decisive, not just with throws, but what he wants to do on a certain play. Do you want to run? Or do you want to pass? Make up your mind.
Yeah, I think that's the main point. He seems hesitant. He seems unsure of himself and what he wants to do, what he thinks is the right decision. And I think that is just alarming considering he's now entering his third preseason. I think that's the major takeaway from this. He just seems like a rookie, and I know he doesn't have a ton of playing time, but he should feel a little more, I would argue, certain and sure of himself and the process that goes into it at this point. All right, Darian, you've been holding for quite a while. Let's get to you. Darian in Greensboro, North Carolina, wants to talk about Trey. Darian, what did you see today from Trey Lance?
Yeah, so a couple things that I saw. With Trey, I think it's just looking too fast for him right now. He's expecting the windows to be wide open, and it's the NFL, and they're not. So when he hits his back foot, he's just not letting it go. And it's just the game is just moving extremely too fast for him. And another thing on that, not only Trey but the whole team. I think we just lost our way in finding the process of navigating the season. We want to get right back to January, and we've lost our thought process on just navigating our way through the season, from the preseason to the regular season, and then earning our way back to January, not just the NFL putting us back in January. So those are just my thoughts, and I'll take the rest off the air.
All right, thanks, Darian. Yeah, good call. I mean, this team obviously has really high expectations, which is what makes this situation so unique, because you have three, relatively, Sam Darnold is a little more experienced, but your options at quarterback are inexperienced, and I would argue none of them are really sure things, but this is a roster around the quarterbacks that is the best in football, in my opinion, at least. So you kind of have a dichotomy between what the team is and what your goals are for the team and what legitimate, fair expectations are for the quarterback position.
And it's tough because this team maybe was a quarterback away last year from going to the Super Bowl.
Last 2 years.
Right. Well, sorry, Jimmy, but yeah.
Back in 2019 too, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus. But you think about it and you kind of sit back and say, okay, this team has 4 quarterbacks. Purdy's a starter. Easy decision there. Yeah. But there is a possibility the other 3 guys, Allen, Darnold, and Lance, might have to play at times this year. And to see Trey go out there and I could argue maybe look the worst of the 3 on the field today, which hasn't been the case during practice, mind you, but to put that performance on the field in front of a live audience, taking live reps with guys who want to hit you and get you, on the ground and get sacks and take the ball away, to see that performance, I don't know how a fan or even Kyle Shanahan sits back and say, you are a playable piece on this offense. Yeah. George Kittle made it the point early in training camp during a press conference to say, we sit with every single young player, rookie or undrafted, and say, hey, look, we can't just win with 30 good players and 20 bad players. We need 50 strong, capable players and bodies in this room with the same goal in mind. Is Trey Lance one of those 50? You'd like to think so, but what he did today, I don't know if he is. If he has to play, let's say week 3, Giants, Thursday night football primetime, and he has to play, do you trust him?
Against that defense? That's tough.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And that scares me.
Yeah, it does. 100%. Something that you said there, though, Trey Lance has had, or at least recently, maybe the last couple of weeks, he certainly, I thought, was the better quarterback, at least when compared to Brock Purdy in the 2 joint practices against the Raiders, more maybe because Brock Purdy struggled in those joint practices. My question for you, though, you've been at just about every single practice in training camp. Are we overreacting to just one half of preseason football? It didn't look pretty. It wasn't great. I know what the stats say. The stats look good. We'll debunk that coming up later. But are we overreacting to just a half of preseason football where he's playing with an offensive line that really struggled? There was, a drop on a screen pass to Jordan Mason, I think. Are we overreacting to a half of a preseason game when, for the most part, he's put some good things on tape in training camp?
Well, keep in mind, Kyle Shanahan wants the entire preseason abolished, so maybe he doesn't think anything of it, and we're kind of blowing smoke here, but it makes me think that, it's one preseason game, it's one half. He can come out against Denver and against Los Angeles in 2 weeks and light it up, and we're saying, what was that in Las Vegas? Oh, my goodness. That was not the Trey Lance I've seen and know. But it also makes me rethink how I feel about it am I overblowing training camp practice? Like, who is the real Trey Lance? I think that's the conversation we've been trying to figure out for 3 years. Who is Trey Lance? Is he the guy who has 3 touchdowns in the red zone in joint practices against Las Vegas or against his own defense in training camp at Levi Stadium? Or is he the quarterback against Las Vegas, comes out and throws 2 near picks, goes 10 for 15, but is really shaky on the easy stuff and seems kind of gun shy? Is he that quarterback? And I think for Kyle Shanahan, he doesn't know. So how can we know? And so we can only go off of what we see from him. And for the mass audience, they've only seen what they saw today.
Not good.
And it's not good at all. And for them to sit back, and I wouldn't blame anybody right now if they said, that's the guy you've hyped up the entire offseason of he got his mechanics fixed and he worked with Patrick Mahomes. That's the guy? I can't tell.
Yeah.
Nothing has seemingly changed with Trey Lance when it comes to playing live action football.
To be fair, Kyle Shanahan has stated multiple times he cares a lot more about, say, the joint practices as opposed to the preseason games. That's fine. He can think that 100% if he feels like players show him what they got, what they can do more in those joint practice environments over a preseason game. Sure, that's fine. But the point still stands that this is gigantic and huge and important for Trey Lance, these preseason games. Maybe a bad showing in a joint practice hurts his standing in Kyle Shanahan's eyes more than a preseason game, whatever. But it's still hugely important. And this isn't something where he's in a position where he can just shrug off a preseason game because he needs things to start falling his way consistently if he's going to resurrect his career with the 49ers, because you're going down a path where, you could see something happen before the season starts where he might not even be on the roster. I know that's crazy. We can talk about that, but this is every single rep in practice and in the joint practices in camp and in the preseason game. They're all feeling like do or die moments for Trey Lance.
Well, it feels like almost every snap, you're waiting for Trey to be who you thought he was going to be. And almost every snap, he's never that player.
You're just waiting for the glimmer of light.
Right, you're waiting for him to be that Drew Brees and Lamar Jackson.
Down the field. Come on.
You're waiting for that 70-yard touchdown pass. And sometimes he hits it. Danny Gray last year against Green Bay in the preseason, they go, that's enough. Pull him off the field. You're our starting quarterback. But almost every snap this offseason, all the media, come on, Trey, they want to see him be this guy. Because you know what? Like, Kyle Shanahan wants that, because guess what? If he has Trey Lance, former 3rd overall pick, the guy who he believes, supposed to be this elite quarterback, and then he has Brock Purdy, that's going to force Shanahan's hand to play Trey Lance, to go, wow, I have this perfect quarterback, this Ferrari, as Jerry Rice called him on this very station. I have a Ferrari compared to a Honda Civic. And Honda Civics, I have a Honda Civic. They do their job.
Hey,
great gas mileage.
Get the job done.
Great job going to the city today. Easy stuff, but you want that Ferrari. Trey Lance has never shown to be that Ferrari. He's that Mitsubishi sports car who's always in the shop getting worked on. And I hate to say it because I want him to succeed, but he's never done anything that makes me say, yes, you are worth 3 first-round draft picks. And Kyle Shanahan's doing the same thing right now, saying, when is Trey going to be what I thought he was going to be?
Yeah, going to need to see something at some point, that's for sure. All right, let's get back to the phones here. I see you on hold. You want to give us a call, 888-957-9570. That is also the Xfinity mobile text line. Let us know your thoughts there. Up next is Tia in Texas. Wants to talk about the play calling. Tia, what did you think in the Niners' first preseason game today?
Yeah, I think y'all are overreacting because to me, you could tell the play calling was different between Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, and Brandon Allen. You could see that when Trey Lance came out, we threw the ball in the first 2 possessions. We never do that. Like, Kyle never throws the ball 3 times in a row, back to back to back. He didn't run the ball really until the second quarter. So I'm trying to figure out why was the play calling different with Trey Lance than it was with Sam Darnold.
I don't know, Tia. That's an interesting question. I think that you can make an argument that Kyle Shanahan is maybe calling a little bit more throws than normal. And they did a lot of play action, which I think is also normal for the 49ers. But he's trying to see what Trey Lance has. Put him back in the fire. Let him drop back to throw and see what he can do when he gets under pressure. Offensive line wasn't good. I don't know about you, Sterling. The play calling didn't really come into mind for me. I don't have a problem with Kyle Shanahan maybe forgetting about the run game a little bit in the preseason game when you're trying to figure out what your quarterback has. That doesn't really bother me all that much. They also threw the ball a decent amount with Sam Darnold in there. I don't know. Was play calling on your radar?
It wasn't, but also Trey Lance threw the ball 15 times. Sam and Brandon Allen got it eight apiece. So 16 for two quarterbacks and 15 for Trey. It wasn't like there was
Trey played the whole first half.
Right.
So those two split the
so
second
it wasn't
half.
like there was this overwhelmingly discrepancy of like, oh my goodness, Trey Lance threw so much more than Sam and Brandon Allen did. But no, I think what it comes down to is Brandon Allen and Sam Darnold are a more efficient quarterback in what they can do. Now, their ability to be a playmaker is much different. Their skill set's much different. Sam Darnold is much more of a quick out, slant, 8 yards, 5 yards, work on timing. Trey Lance is a let's get this ball down the field as fast as we can. And I think for Kyle Shanahan, for Trey Lance, who in his mind I'm sure is still fighting for the number 2 quarterback job, but you want to see all the work he's put in over the offseason. You want to see, okay, is it going to pay off here? How are you in the pocket? There have been no Trey packages in practice. This is you got to suck it up and play quarterback in the NFL. This is no more. We're going to utilize your legs on read options and stuff. There was one running QB design play in practice. One. There was like 11 practices. In the red zone, he got one. There wasn't this read option to TDP or McCaffrey. This was you are going to play quarterback within the pocket. I have to see how do you perform. Trey Lance today, D+. And other guys, Sam and Brandon, which I think because they are more refined in the pocket than Trey is, they were more efficient today. But the play calling was by no means on my radar of, that looks a little wonky here, it looks a little weird here. This was Trey Lance just didn't do his job well today, whereas Sam and Brandon Allen kind of did.
Yeah, and Sam Darnold, I guess I'll ask you this question. I have my answer. I think it's a relatively obvious one. What was the best play a Niners quarterback made in this game today?
37-yard pass to Ronnie Bell, backed up against his own end zone by Sam Darnold.
Yeah, Sam Darnold from his own end zone to the right sideline in the breadbasket to rookie Ronnie Bell off the 35-yard line. Again, from the middle part of the field all the way outside to the right sideline, perfectly placed ball, 37 yards through the air. And those are the kinds of plays that Sam Darnold makes. What Kyle Shanahan saying that Sam Darnold's the most talented thrower of the football the Niners have ever had, potentially. Like, he has crazy arm talent.
Yeah.
I know everyone kind of took those comments and ran wild with them. Not saying that he's a better quarterback than Steve Young or Joe Montana or whatever, but he has the crazy arm talent. Those kinds of plays are not new for Sam Darnold. He's made that kind of throw often in his NFL career. The issue is, for Sam Darnold, for every one of those amazing, incredible throws he makes, he has one equally boneheaded throw that is intercepted by a linebacker where Darnold hit him between the numbers. That's what Sam Darnold's issue is.
But that didn't happen today.
It did not. And who made the more turnover-worthy throws today? It was Trey Lance. No interceptions officially, but the touchdown pass that he made to Ross Dwelly was really intended for Ronnie Bell, and it should have been picked off. And then at the end of the first half, where the Niners were trying to get into field goal range, they got the ball with, 30 seconds left? First throw of that drive, over the middle, right to a defender, should have been intercepted. It was dropped. They ultimately moved the ball. He made a couple of nice throws after that. They got into field goal range. Jake Moody missed it, 0 for 2 today.
Yikes.
But if the knock on Sam Darnold, who you're competing with to be the number 2 quarterback on this team, the knock on him is his propensity to turn the ball over, and now you're making a habit of turning the ball over, that's a recipe to not win the number 2 job.
If anything, today reaffirmed why Sam Darnold's here. It reaffirmed the idea that Sam Darnold was brought in to either push Trey Lance or take Trey Lance's spot. Because right now, as of the first preseason game being over with, we're going on to week 2 on Monday, Sam Darnold is in the lead for this quarterback 2 job because he's played better throughout the majority of training camp on most days, although Trey Lance has had, the higher highs. But it's all about how high is your floor. right now Sam Darnold's floor is much higher than Trey Lance's.
Oh, man.
And I hate saying that.
Scary.
But there's a real chance, and Niner fans should get to understand this, that Sam Darnold might be your quarterback too this year, and he might play this year. And I think Kyle Shanahan believes he'll play very well in this offense, where Sam Darnold's not going to have to force plays in this offense. There'll be wide open guys in the flat, on crossers, where Trey Lance has having to wait for guys to get open because, and to be fair, let's be honest here, no quarterback had the first-string offensive line. Nobody had Christian McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo and Ayuk. We're going to make things easier for any quarterback they play with, Josh Johnson included.
Now, you're also going against the Raiders' second-string defense.
Right, so it kind of evens itself out, and you go, okay, well, maybe you just weren't good today, whereas Sam Darnold, you point to and say, okay, he was 5 for 8, like 85 yards, had the best play of the day from a quarterback, and I think looked the most prepared to play in a football game today. I don't think Trey Lance looked prepared. He looked wide-eyed, kind of like, what do I do? Should I throw? Should I pass? Where should the football go? And Sam's like, bing, bang, boom, here, first down, 85 yards. Ronnie Bell, 37 yards. And he's like, yeah, I've played here. I've done this before for 4 years. And Trey Lance is like, I've played 4 games in 3 years. I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Well, yeah, it's a weird conversation because you have Sam Darnold, who's experienced in the sense that he's been in the league and he started a lot of games, but he's new to this system and he's new to this offense. You have Trey Lance, who is not new to the system and not new to the offense. He was drafted 2.5 years ago now, and this offense, this scheme, is the only one he's known after his North Dakota State days, but he doesn't have a lot of playing time in the league. And a lot of the talk at a training camp was, well, how quick is Sam Darnold going to pick up this offense? It's a difficult offense to pick up, a difficult offense to master. Trey Lance has the advantage in that sense because he has been with Kyle Shanahan. He knows this offense, or at least he should know this offense more than Sam Darnold. And maybe it's just Darnold's experience being in the NFL taking over, but it also felt like Sam Darnold was the quarterback who just was more comfortable with the play calls that Kyle Shanahan was making. And I know it's relatively vanilla. They're not going to go deep into their playbook in the preseason. They're not going
There's no Philly special today.
Yeah, they're not going to expose their secrets. They're not going to, the calls that Shanahan is drawing up on his cocktail napkins when he's out, in Cabo or whatever during the offseason. He's not bringing that out preseason week 1. But it just seemed like, maybe contrary to what a lot of us expected, Sam Darnold was more comfortable in the system than Trey Lance was, at least early on right now.
And maybe that is the experience of playing 4 years now, or 5 years now, I guess, with the Jets and Carolina. But even Craig in the back made a good point that Sam Darnold has played with less talent than this team's second-string offense, and he made it look better than Trey Lance did, who has had, in a very small sample size, Ayuk and Debo and Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, albeit didn't play with him yet. But Sam Darnold looked like the best quarterback on the field, minus Aiden O'Connell in Las Vegas.
Oh, he's the GOAT, Aiden O'Connell.
Like, Sam Darnold today, whether it's the experience or the comfortability playing in the NFL for 5 years now, he looked like a poised, decisive quarterback in the pocket, right on his timing. You want to get on Kyle Shanahan's good side? You do what Sam Darnold did today.
You do what Jimmy Garoppolo has done.
Yeah.
Which is what Sam Darnold did. Hitting the easy throws, be on with your timing. There was a great throw out to the right. I think it might have been Ronnie Bell, the receiver, on a third down in the third quarter. He threw it out before Bell made the cut out to the outside. Perfectly placed, perfectly timed ball, and they moved the sticks. They got the first down. You rarely see, I know it's a small sample, we didn't see Trey Lance with that sort of good timing on a route and putting it right on his guy. He seemed a little more hesitant, and that's a really big deal for this offense, considering so much of it is timing-based. Trey Lance, 10 of 15, 112 and a touchdown, no interceptions. Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen both were 5 for 8. Darnold, 84 yards. Brandon Allen, 36 yards. Allen also did throw an interception. Darnold did not throw a touchdown. Niners lose. They get dominated 34-7 over the Raiders, week 1 of the preseason. We'll take a break here on Overtime. When we come back, we'll continue reacting. We want to hear from you as well. Let us know your thoughts about Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, and company. There are some positives to get to. We have 2 more hours of overtime. We'll get to it all here on 95.7 The Game. 888-957-9570 is the number to call. We'll be back with you after this break. You're listening to Overtime on 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising. It's not online, and it's not the warehouse clubs. The best deals on top-rated TVs.
Thea, you just heard Trey Lance talking about his touchdown pass in the first half. It was what we thought was originally going to be a low light.
Touchdown pass.
Yeah.
In quotation.
Air quotes. Touchdown pass to Rostowelli. 9-yard touchdown to Rostowelli for Trey Lance. He was trying to throw to Ronnie Bell, a rookie who I know we'll talk about a little bit later here on Overtime.
It's Chris Conley, wasn't it? Chris Conley in the back?
You're right. It was Chris Conley. Chris Conley, who also had a couple
Give
of nice
the vet
moments.
some cred, Mark. Come on.
Chris Conley had a couple of nice catches. So did Ronnie Bell. We'll talk about that coming up. But that touchdown pass for Trey Lance, at the very least, should have been incomplete. It probably should have been intercepted. It was Trey Lance's only touchdown pass of the game. He played the entire first half. He went 10 of 15, 112 yards, that touchdown, no interceptions. But we've kind of been referencing it for the first hour here of Overtime, Sterling. He had that dropped interception, and then at the end of the first half, where they're trying a hyper-quick drive to get in field goal range with 30 seconds left after a Raiders touchdown, his first pass of that drive right at the defensive back, dropped, incomplete, should have been an interception. He followed it up with two really nice throws to get into field goal range. There was a 17-yard completion to Conley. There was also a couple of other nice plays as well. Fumangali, tight end, broke a couple of tackles. So we just have to debunk these Trey Lance stats for a moment. Again, 10 of 15, 112, the touchdown, no interceptions. Let's just assume, and I know it's not fair, there's always balls that bounce one way and bounce the other way. A lot of time, it tends to even out. But let's just assume those two passes that probably should have been intercepted were intercepted. How would that change Trey Lance's box score? So instead of being 10 of 15, he'd be 6 of 12. Not only do you have fewer completions, but you also have fewer pass attempts, because if that other interception happens, the second one, the other dropped interception, that is, he's not on the field for the rest of the half. He doesn't have those other completions and those other attempts. 6 of 12. Instead of 112 yards passing, 57 yards passing. Instead of one touchdown, no touchdowns. Instead of no interceptions, 2 interceptions. So the way the ball bounced had a big impact on Trey Lance's game. You just look at the box score, you think, oh my God, he got so much better. Not only could he be in line for the number 2 job, maybe he's pushing Brock Purdy. 10 of 15, 112 and a touchdown. I'm here to tell you, that stat is a lie. 6 of 12, 57, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That is more telling of Trey Lance's performance today.
Can I tell you what you just did?
Yeah.
You've been doing what fans have been doing with Jimmy Garoppolo for the past 4 years. Well, Jimmy had 1 touchdown and no picks. He was 10 for 15, a great completion percentage. Well, yeah, but he could have thrown 2 picks and 6 for 12, and they could have lost the game. You're doing the same thing, and Trey Lance had a performance in the same way of what got Jimmy Garoppolo replaced here. Okay, you survived the game and you got a touchdown. Hey, we scored a touchdown and we're playing pinball in the end zone, and the box score looks good. And I love Jimmy Garoppolo, all the wins he had here and all the great memories he had here. But that box score is similar to how many Jimmy G plays and many games went of, well, the box score looks really nice, but in reality, it was 2 drop picks and almost a lost game in the red zone. For Trey Lance, you cannot play like Jimmy Garoppolo. You have to play not just better than Jimmy, better than Sam Darnold now. And you're not doing that. You're doing things that got the guy before you replaced. What's going to happen to Trey? Oh, he'll be replaced. That's what's on the line here for Trey. You can't put out, a 6 for 12, 57 yards and 2 picks. The box score might say, oh, it wasn't that bad, but in reality, it was a bad day for Trey Lance.
I can guarantee you Kyle Shanahan does not give you-know-what, does not give 2 you-know-whats about what the box score says.
No,
100% not. They are probably getting ready to travel back home, but they're on the plane looking at tape, whatever it is. Kyle Shanahan is pointing out those 2 plays that went. One went as a touchdown, the other went as just a run-of-the-mill incompletion. But those 2 plays, absolutely terrible decisions and throws, maybe not necessarily terrible. The decision is what's bad there for Trey Lance. And if that isn't something that he can get corrected, then he's not going to see the field as a 49er.
He may never be a 49er again. Yeah. But for Kyle Shanahan, he looks at that touchdown and says, ugh, gross.
Yeah.
What was that? Should have been a pick. Should have been 2 picks. It hit 2 guys' hands that weren't a Niner. And you sit there and say, well, okay, but it was a touchdown. Okay, yeah, the outcome, sure, touchdown, but just like the score, the outcome here doesn't matter because of what preceded it. Dropped interception earlier in the game by Trey Lance. Dropped interception later in the game by Trey Lance. 2 almost drive killing. No score on the board, albeit a Jake Moody missed field goal, but you had 2 drives that Trey Lance almost ruined himself that could have got you no points. They scored 7 points today. It should have been 0-34, right. And 2 of those plays were on Trey Lance.
And the first one that went for the touchdown, it was on the back of a really good drive by Trey Lance. It was the best he looked all day, which is what is really frustrating because after three and outs to begin the game where he was facing pressure left and right, he was sacked 4 times in the first half, including twice on the first 3 plays from scrimmage for the 49ers. He put together a good drive, had extended plays with his legs, but as you said earlier, kept his eyes downfield and threw instead of running. Maybe you want him to run here and there, but keeping your eyes downfield, throwing the ball, not always a bad thing. A good decision there for Trey Lance. And then he follows it up with that pass into the end zone, which should have been intercepted, turned into a touchdown, and you just feel the momentum kind of get sapped out of him, even though it did go for a touchdown in that moment. But I don't know. Something I wanted to ask you is the offensive line obviously was not good. I mean, 4 sacks of Trey Lance in the first half. It was awful. They played a little bit better, I think, in the second quarter.
As soon as Sam Darnold got in, it looked a little different.
They did look better in the third. You're right. Things were a little smoother in the second quarter as well. The first 3 drives were absolutely disastrous for everyone involved on offense. One specific note on the offensive line is John Feliciano, who they acquired this offseason, was playing backup center. He has some experience there, has mostly been a guard in the NFL, but it's not who Trey Lance has been working with all training camp. So perhaps you look back on things, maybe you see, well, if Trey Lance was, catching snaps from his normal center, maybe things go a little bit smoother. Did you think Feliciano perhaps had any impact on general uneasiness of Trey Lance in the first half?
Well, I think it comes down to the miscommunication on certain plays. You saw Jason Poe miss a stunt, kind of block the wrong guy, and a free rusher came in and hit Trey Lance. I think for Trey to not have a familiarity with the center, that also leads to unfamiliarity with the guards. When you have guys sliding over left and right, you have Feliciano, who's usually playing right or left guard, then you have Nick Zakelj playing left guard for you, then everything kind of gets shifted around where your backup and your second team center has been Keith Ishmael this year. And so to not have that consistency where you go into a game thinking, okay, it's Keith Ishmael, the guy I've been taking snaps from besides Jake Brendel all offseason throughout the entirety of the summer, you get into game time and it's an entirely different person out there and you're saying, okay, usually you're my right guard, now you're playing center. My center is now on the bench and I got 3 rookies around him or 3 second-year guys that really aren't that good around him and I'm sitting there running for my life. So I think that was the reason why things were so poor in that first couple of drives. No play or no drive lasted 2 minutes for Trey. And so I think for him early, that rattled him. That could have shaken him up and go, okay, I'm fighting for my life here, And so, but as time progressed, you can see Trey kind of settle in somewhat. There were much better throws. The pockets were much cleaner, which is when you saw Trey make those nice throws. My concern with Trey is not a clean pocket. To be fair, my concern with any quarterback isn't the clean pocket. Yeah. For Trey, it's when the play breaks down, what do? That's where the inconsistencies come up. I'm okay with you thinking you saw someone deep downfield and maybe you miss a throw over a receiver towards the boundary. I'm okay with that stuff. But I'm not okay with mistiming on a Chris Conley open touchdown that becomes almost a near pick. I'm not okay with you just not seeing a linebacker blatantly right in front of your tight end, almost a pick. Yep. And it's stuff like that where you can look for excuses here or there. Oh, Jordan Mason dropped a screen pass. He could have been 11 for 16 or 11 for 15. Oh, my goodness. But it's like, okay, but altogether, Trey Lance did not put together a consistent performance that could make any coach proud to say, that's my quarterback.
Yeah, I think you can argue how much the preseason game matters, how much stock you put into it, whether or not the ball bounced his way. Or you could argue a lot of things. What you can argue is in this half of football, he did not look good. It's up to you to determine how much of an impact that has on how Kyle Shanahan feels about him, if it impacts his standing within the Niners quarterback room. But I would disagree wholeheartedly if someone comes on air, someone calls in, someone says, I see it on Twitter, no, Trey Lance looked good. Like, that's just flat out wrong. Like, I'm not burying the guy. I'm not saying that I think he can't turn it around in the future. But if you're going to try to convince me that Trey Lance looked good today in the preseason, I'm calling you crazy because he did not look good. And I can't find, there are moments, throws, plays here or there. All in all, you take it all in at once, he did not look good.
And it's not like he's not going to have to play if he does indeed start this year at a certain point or come in relief of a quarterback who gets hurt or maybe isn't playing well. It's not like he's not going to have to play with the backup offensive lineman here or there. Now, maybe that's an organizational concern of say, hey, our backup offensive linemen aren't very good. And I think Matt Pryor was a good example of that today. Running play to his right, I believe it was TDP with the run, and he's out there in front of all the rest of the offensive linemen ready for a block, and he just jogs out there. TDP gets tackled, and he's sitting there like, what do you want me to do? I want you to do your job and block. It's not like Trey Lance isn't going to be being blocked by or being in the pocket with guys who maybe aren't Trent Williams one day. And maybe it's Jalen Moore, or maybe it's a Matt Pryor, and you're saying, okay, your backup left tackle ain't there. You got to figure this thing out. And I get it. It's 5 guys who maybe aren't going to be in those positions come, week 1 against Pittsburgh. But right now, Sam Darnold had that exact same offensive line and looked far better than Trey Lance today.
Yeah, he did. And we could talk about the offensive line, not necessarily these guys and how they performed today, but just in general, lack of depth at offensive line, because if there's an injury to the starting group, and we still don't know exactly what the starting group is going to look like. We know who they are.
I think we do now.
We know who they are,
right,
but we don't know if are they going to prove themselves the top 10 offensive line in football.
You're
I don't know.
Right.
We certainly have doubts on that. But where I think I can feel relatively confident is that I don't know how many injuries this team can survive on the offensive line.
Well, I think right now it's defensive line, the same thing. We saw Javon Kinlaw and Kevin Gibbons, guys who maybe are going to play, I don't want to say pivotal roles, but guys who are going to be in the trenches expected to make an impact this year.
If they're healthy, they'll play every game.
Getting pushed around by second string offensive linemen. And was there a running play that Las Vegas, didn't get 5 yards on today?
Didn't seem like
Felt like every play, they were just bursting through the middle of the field, getting 5 or 6 yards, big chunk plays. And so I think for both the trenches, offense and defense, there are some serious questions as to can you protect the quarterback and keep Purdy upright, keep Lance or Darnold upright? And for the defense, minus Nick Bosa and minus all the starters, can you actually stop a run? Please? We're going to have to this year.
Well, that and, how often was Vegas receivers just running open 5, 7, 10 yards down the field? Easy gains for Aiden O'Connell and company for the Raiders. Did want to highlight a text on the YouTube chat coming from Michael. $5 for this. Michael, thank you so much.
Wow.
He says, we have every right to be concerned and overreact a bit. This is year 7 with Kyle and year 3 for Trey. I'd understand if it was year 1. I agree, Michael. It certainly becomes more understandable if this is how it looks for Trey Lance the year that he's drafted, despite the fact that he has all the hiccups and bumps in the road that he has had. Yeah, I get it. It's not like he's entering his 3rd year as a starting quarterback. He doesn't have those reps, but it is still certainly troublesome. We want to hear from you. Give us a call, 888-957-9570. That's also the Xfinity mobile text line. Let us know your thoughts. Again, 888-957-9570. It's difficult because you don't want to, and this is something that Michael just said on the YouTube chat. There's a couple of other messages on here as well. Jay says it's one preseason game. Everyone is freaking out. Laughing face emoji. There's a balance here because you don't want to overreact to just 2 quarters of football, and you want to be able to trust what he did through training camp, which for the most part was more consistent, more consistently impressive. But it's hard to ignore the fact that the mistakes you saw from him in this game are the same mistakes we've been talking about now for 2.5 years.
The good things Trey Lance has done are things of legend at this point. They're myths because they don't happen when they actually matter. Now, does preseason actually matter? No. The outcome of being 34-7 matters nil.
Yeah, I don't care about the score.
Who cares, right? And to be honest with you, had Brock Purdy had the same day today, maybe we are having a different conversation of, okay, it's Brock Purdy, whatever. He's coming back from an injury with the arm. For Trey, because of the expectation placed on his head, because of the things that he has yet to show us that he's supposed to be able to do Sunday to Sunday to Monday to Thursday to Sunday again, right? He's done none of that. And unfortunately for him, it doesn't matter how many, 5 practice stretches he looks like the best quarterback on the field. It doesn't matter when it comes to Sunday in Pittsburgh on week 1 or a game you're forced to play on primetime Thursday night at Levi Stadium. Like, everything Trey Lance has done that's been great has been in preseason, meaningless football games. The only great game, only great performance I can say he had was against Houston in a must-win game in 2021. Now, I get it. He got hurt. Some of those opportunities are ripped from him, and it's not his fault. I get that. But for Trey Lance for people to still have the expectation of he's going to be the guy, I think that ship has kind of sailed for Trey Lance in Kyle Shanahan's mind. Brock Purdy's the guy now. He's a starting quarterback of this team, and he's not going to not play unless he's just awful this year, which I don't think is going to happen, or he gets hurt again. And for Trey Lance, it's if Brock Purdy gets hurt, can you come in and be a competent quarterback? And I could argue in the majority of his outings in preseason and in the regular season, he hasn't even shown that.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question for you. You've been down there in Santa Clara. You were in Vegas as well, watching a bunch of the practices. If you were just honestly to rank what you've seen in training camp, in the practice,
just practice,
ignore this preseason game today against the Raiders. Rank the 3, and I'm not going to include Brandon Allen in this. I guess you can if you want.
Yeah, forget him.
I care most about Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold.
Right.
In training camp, in the practices, in the joint practices, in the 11-on-11 scrimmages, in the 7-on-7 work, all of it.
Yeah.
Practices, not the preseason game. Rank the quarterbacks in terms of who you've been most impressed with, who you think has played the best in training camp.
I think Brock Purdy has led the offense more efficiently than most quarterbacks, or all quarterbacks down there. He's quarterback 1 in my eyes. Trey Lance has been the second best quarterback on most days. He's also been the best quarterback on some days.
That's what makes this disappointing today.
That's exactly this. I told you earlier, this is the most disappointed I've been in a preseason game in years. Because and
it's not about the result.
No.
It's about individual performance.
Exactly. I've been there. I've seen Trey Lance perform well, and I've left training camp, and I sat in press conferences saying, man, Trey Lance looks like this could be the year for him. This is the best he's ever looked.
Man, 3rd straight year of feeling that.
Right. It is like, this is the best Trey Lance has ever looked. I'm so excited for what he might get the opportunity to do in week 1 of the preseason. I want to see him play a full half and show what he's been building towards the entire offseason. He's finally healthy. The mechanics are fixed. He worked with Patrick Mahomes. I want to see what he learned from him put on the football field. And to see him do what he did today, it's like, I have no words. I'm speechless because everything that he has shown was not put on display today. The accuracy, the timing, the consistency he's had was not on the field today. And I'm not sure if that's because Vegas, again, was game planning for a Niner preseason game or the offensive line rattled him. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because if you're playing in a real football game, a defense that wants to hit you, wants to hurt you, wants to get 17 sacks against you, wants to break your legs and break your arms and make you fall down and never play again, like, you don't think Philadelphia is not going to want to crush Trey Lance or the Giants or even the Rams? Like, Seattle Seahawks, Christmas Day, you don't think if Trey Lance plays, they're not going to come at him 110% because they want to get revenge on losing 3 times last year? Of course they will. You have to show up when it matters, and Trey Lance has not done that yet, and I want him to so bad because I've seen that in practice when the bright lights aren't on, when there isn't pressure on him, but as soon as the heat gets turned up, he gets timid, he gets indecisive, and it makes me question, is he the guy? I don't think he is anymore. That ship has sailed on him, and it's so, it almost hurts to say that.
Yeah.
My heart hurts for Trey Lance.
I'm with you, 100%. 100%. We see a lot of comments here on the YouTube channel. If you want to, you can join in, youtube.com/957 the game. A lot of people bringing up Trey Lance's ankle injury from last year.
It's a good point.
I know you and I talked about it early at the top, and we're up against it here. We'll hit a break. Dave, I see you on hold. We'll get to you on the other side on overtime here on 95.7 the game. Is there any part of you who feels like this is his first live game action? I know you asked me this earlier. I didn't really have the ankle injury in mind because he's been fully healthy for a while now, and he has worked on that ankle for quite a long time. Is there any bit you think for Trey Lance getting back in his first real game action where it might take him a bit to fully trust that ankle and trust that foot again. I could maybe see that.
Yeah.
Maybe it gets a little bit better next week in preseason, in week number 2. I don't know how you feel about that. I guess it could be part of it, but you still feel like his decision making and the process of it should be a little bit better. Maybe the physicality isn't quite there. I don't know how you feel.
I don't think it's about Trey Lance's legs or leg or ankle. It's about when you're standing tall in that pocket, are you making the right decisions at the right time? He's not. He's just not doing that. He was during practice. He's not. He didn't today. Yeah. And I think for him, you don't have to be this insanely mobile quarterback all the time for Kyle Shanahan. Use it sometimes to extend plays, hit your targets in stride. He's never done that here. Never.
No.
And today, didn't do it again either.
No, he didn't. And the Niners got dominated against the Raiders 34-7 in the first preseason game of the year. You're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. Still a lot more to get into. Dave, I see you on hold. We'll get to you coming out on the other side. It's Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. More Niners after this right here on 95.7 The Game.
Did you know that most people wait 6 or 7 years before they buy a new TV? That's a lot of time in front of one TV. So why not get one of the best sets for the next 7 years? Like one of the top-rated Samsung, LG, or Sony.
drive, leaving there on the score. Made a hell of a play on the touchdown. I know it was almost a hell of a play for them with the pick, but that was the last guy on a bootleg that flashed, and he put it on him, and that guy came in and tipped it, made a good play, but fortunately Dwelly was there. Wish we got that short yardage so we could finish that drive. It was hard to not put him in the third.
Now back to overtime on 95.7 The Game.
Kyle Shanahan talking about his quarterback, Trey Lance, his first half. You heard him talk about the touchdown to Ross Dwelly, which could have easily been an interception. You're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. 888-957-9570 is the number to dial. You can also text us at that number on the Xfinity mobile text line, 888-957-9570. But something interesting there at the end of what Kyle Shanahan said, Sterling, difficult for him not to put Trey Lance in to start the third quarter.
Interesting. Do you read that as you've played poorly, go out there and do more?
Yes.
Or there you go.
What's the other option?
You've played well. I keep building on what you've shown so far.
Which one do you think?
Probably the first one.
Yeah.
Probably the first one.
We don't want to ruin your confidence, kid. Right. Let's get you some momentum.
We're going to showcase you some more to other teams.
Oh, is that what you think this is?
I don't think they want to trade Trey Lance. But it is interesting that they were even thinking about putting him out there for maybe a small portion of the third quarter. The fact that they would kind of dwindle away Sam Darnold's play, or maybe get rid of Brandon Allen's entire chunk, which would mean he hadn't really practiced or played in 3 days because he had no reps on Thursday and Friday in team drills. You could also argue that maybe that's Kyle Shanahan saying you need the reps, and that Sam Darnold is already quarterback 2 in my mind and doesn't need the reps. There's so much to decipher with Kyle Shanahan's press conferences.
Got to figure out what's going on in Kyle's
It's like the
mind.
X-Files.
It's difficult. It could be a million different things. One thing I think is interesting, and we'll hear it here right now, Trey Lance talking about the performance today. And one thing he said that stands out to me, I haven't heard this yet. I just see the description that Craig Valentino behind the glass has given us. Trey Lance saying he didn't feel any pressure to perform today.
It hasn't been, honestly. For me, I was just excited to get back out there. Honestly, today, that was the biggest thing. Go play real football again, go compete again. So that felt good, I guess, first and foremost. But obviously, the score showed it. But just from drive to drive, just got to execute better.
Didn't really feel it. If I'm in Trey Lance's position, I'm feeling pressure big time every snap I take from here on out.
And if you're not, maybe you should. You might play better.
Maybe it'll light a fire under you a little bit.
Well, you would think Sam Darnold being brought in this year and Jimmy Garoppolo being brought in last year would do that. Now, I get he got hurt, but if Trey Lance isn't feeling pressure, maybe he's just kind of done. Like, oh, whatever. Like,
he's probably lying.
I hope. I hope he's lying.
Yeah.
Tell a little fib here or there. Like, come on, Trey. Like, this is the time. There is no luxury of there's always next practice or there's always next game. If you continually put out bad performances like today, you are not going to be the backup quarterback here in San Francisco, and in a certain, possible, future, you may not be here in San Francisco at all. And we're sitting here at this very station in a month or two saying that was the biggest bust in San Francisco 49er history.
God.
That's crazy.
It is.
Jake Moody misses 2 kicks. Trey Lance plays poorly. Javon Kinlaw is getting pushed around. How many times can you miss, Kyle, before it come calling for you?
Well, all the things you just mentioned, Jake Moody missing field goals, there were issues everywhere.
Right.
I mean, it was an ugly game, 34-7.
Yeah.
All we can talk about is the backup quarterbacks. And I mean, I get it. It makes sense. We were talking off air during the last commercial break. There is no other team in the NFL that spends as much time on their backup quarterback as people talking about the San Francisco 49ers do.
It's only us and Detroit.
Yeah.
That's it.
At least Jared Goff he's on a level other than Brock Purdy in my mind. So it's a little different there.
You went a little too far there, but all right.
Jared Goff, dark horse MVP candidate. Jared Goff.
Okay.
Hey,
turn the lights off.
North Bay.
Hey, Craig, turn his mic off. Turn his mic off, Craig.
You disagree with that?
Yeah.
Wow. They're going to win that division.
Oh, I agree with that.
Okay.
But not the MVP part.
We'll check back in on that. Well, let's get back. Let's get back to the 49ers here. Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Give us a call, 888-957-9570. The Xfinity mobile text line also open for you. Again, 888-957-9570. Let us know your thoughts. YouTube.com/957thegame, Twitch.tv/957thegame. I've got all the pages up. We will get your comment if you leave one for us here on Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you. Spent a lot of time talking about Trey Lance, of course. We have brought up Sam Darnold. He looked decent, 5 of 8 passing, had a really perfect throw down the right sideline to rookie Ronnie Bell. A couple of other nice plays, nice throws. Didn't commit a turnover, didn't come close to throwing an interception. Ultimately, he looked good. I think where this conversation goes, if he continues to stack performances like that, one, it seems more likely that he becomes this team's backup quarterback. That seems where it's trending. But it becomes, what is his future with this 49ers team? Because he signed a 1-year contract. This is, like the Mitch Trubisky model where he fizzles out in his first stop, goes to rehab his image elsewhere.
Yeah.
Buffalo doesn't really play, then gets another starting job with the Steelers.
Yeah.
What is Sam Darnold's future with this roster after a game like today? I mean, he looked decent, but if things go to plan for the 49ers, Sam Darnold does not take a snap for this team this year.
What if I toss this out there?
Okay, toss it.
And I understand maybe there's some trepidation of why would you even say that? Why would you even ask that question? Niner fans know this quarterback very well, Alex Smith.
Love him.
Who doesn't, right?
We used to not.
We used to hate him. But a bunch of different coordinators, a ton of head coaches in his time here in San Francisco prior to Jim Harbaugh. A lot of inconsistency up top, turmoil all the way around, from ownership all the way down to the coaching booth, right? Why can't Sam Darnold have that career turnaround with Kyle Shanahan? Why can't he be a guy who was in New York, awful team around him, awful head coaching, awful GM, go to Carolina, head coach gets fired, then comes to San Francisco with a competent head coach, one of the best offensive play callers, if not the best in the NFL, a kind of competent ownership group. Jed York's got himself in trouble right now, but a good GM in John Lynch and one of the best rosters in football around him. Why can't he be 2017 Alex Smith with the 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio and 4,000 passing yards? Why can't he be that guy?
Are we ever going to know?
We might this year, but let's say he plays. Let's say Sam Darnold plays 6 games. Kyle Shanahan's going to make this the easiest experience of his life. Top 10 offensive line, the best defense in football, the best weapons he's ever had, if not the best offensive weapons on one team in the entire league.
I agree.
And Christian McCaffrey being the X factor. Why couldn't Sam Darnold be a 2017 Alex Smith for this team?
I'll tell you, I think Kyle Shanahan is asking the same question. I mean, it's what he told Mike Silver a couple of weeks ago. Mike Silver of the Chronicle, when talking about the Niners quarterback position, said, hey, why can't Sam Darnold have a career trajectory a la Steve Young? It's not the first time that Kyle Shanahan has brought up Steve Young's name when talking about Sam Darnold.
Unprovoked, mind you.
Unprovoked. The question was not about Steve Young. The question was about Sam Darnold, and Kyle Shanahan willingly brings up Steve Young's name. Obviously, he had, out of BYU, he did not do well in Tampa, which is where he began his career, ultimately came to the 49ers. They got him for dirt cheap after he didn't show well early in his career, served as a backup behind Joe Montana, then became a Hall of Famer, won a Super Bowl. You know the rest of the story.
Who's Steve Young?
Sam Darnold is the next Steve Young, apparently. Yeah. But, I mean, the fact that Kyle Shanahan believes in his ability enough to even bring that up, I think gives credence to your point. Why can't Sam Darnold, in a good situation, not necessarily become a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, but a quarterback that can help you win games at this level, can win you a playoff game? Alex Smith has won playoff games. Like, why can't he do something like that? I don't know. I ultimately don't really buy it that much because we've seen a fair amount of Sam Darnold, and I know it's really been bad situations. If he gets a chance to play, I'm sure he will be better than he was at his previous stops.
Hope so.
But I'm not sure he ever gets to a level where he's an Alex Smith and he's winning you a game against the New Orleans Saints in the postseason.
I just view Sam Darnold as this player that, look, had you told me in the offseason, we're going to sign Sam Darnold and he'll be this team's backup quarterback, I would have said, you're crazy. No, I don't want him. Don't bring him here. But don't forget, Peter King 2 years ago, when they were trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo out of here and have Trey Lance be the quarterback number 1, who was the quarterback he said John Lynch wanted? Sam Darnold. it feels like they have wanted, or at least liked, Sam Darnold enough to want to get him in the building and see what he looks like with Kyle Shanahan for at least 2 years. He's in the building now. And if Shanahan's tossing out Steve Young, and I'm tossing out Alex Smith. I mean, Alex Smith is a fine quarterback who turned his career around in Kansas City and late here in San Francisco. Is that good enough to win a championship? I don't know. Is that Kirk Cousins type of quarterbacking? Probably. But if that's the guy Kyle's always wanted, I'm not saying go out and get Kirk. I don't want Kirk Cousins. The quarterbacks, I think on Netflix is great. He's a great guy. I'm glad your wife dresses you, Kirk. You look phenomenal. But
does he?
A little bit. The tucked in polo shirt and the plaid short sleeve button up is not a great look.
What about all the chains, though?
I love that, though. That's great stuff. It's great stuff. But if that's the kind of quarterback Kyle Shanahan's always wanted, and Sam Darnold has it's an inkling of that, why shouldn't we believe that's possible?
What do you guys think? 888-957-9570. What is Sam Darnold's, what can he possibly do with the 49ers? What is his ceiling? Can he be a quarterback that the Niners can win with?
Is he Steve Young?
No. Not going to bring that up once again. A lot of people here on the YouTube chat saying Sam Darnold is solid. Sammy D is solid, says Enrique.
We got Brocky P and Sammy D. I love it, Enrique.
Jay says, why not stack the QB room with as much talent as you can?
Bring Josh Johnson back. Let's get 5 quarterbacks in here.
Okay, you went too far now.
That's my Jared Goff MVP dark horse conversation right there. It's too far.
That is not equal. Jared, okay, I'm letting that one go. No, Josh Johnson can stay the hell away from the San Francisco 49ers for all I care. But I mean, Sam Darnold, I think it becomes an interesting conversation. Yeah, what's up, Craig?
He's with the Baltimore Ravens right now, so
is he?
Yes,
he threw a fade in the end zone for a touchdown yesterday.
Wow. Well,
he looked better than Trey Lance
He'll probably get cut. He'll be available at some point if the Niners want him. Not that they should. I mean, ideally, Brock Purdy is healthy. He plays every single snap. He's good. He's the guy the 49ers say that they expect him to be, say that he is. But then the question becomes, if Brock Purdy has to miss time, based on what we know right now, after one preseason game, who do you want to get the snaps after Brock Purdy? If Brock Purdy misses time, whether it's an injury, whatever the situation is, who do you want getting snaps? Let us know. 888-957-9570. I think the tide is beginning to shift a little bit with this answer, Sterling, because I've been in this group for as long as Trey Lance has been here. Yeah. I need to know who this guy is before I feel comfortable moving on from him, trading him, whatever the situation is. Mike Silver of the Chronicle even threw out cutting him, if that's what it comes down to. Oy. Before that happens, I feel like I need to know what the guy is.
What if we already know what he is? And it's this.
That's the point. I think that's where this conversation is going. Sam Darnold feels like the safer option right now, and I would be shocked if there aren't more 49er fans coming around to that idea after what we saw today.
Do you think Kyle Shanahan now playing it safe? Right, Brock Purdy seems like a rather safe quarterback when it comes to his skill set. Maybe the ceiling isn't super high, but the average 33 points last year, went to the NFC Championship game. Sam Darnold, kind of the backtrack on what you wanted in Trey Lance or who you thought Trey Lance would be. Do you think Kyle Shanahan try to get the big fish, right? Try to get Trey Lance, the franchise quarterback, this young, raw, talented player, and now it's kind of backtracking, saying maybe I should play a little safer here, reel things back in. I went too far at the kind of find myself again and what I want in quarterbacks. It does feel like that. Every time Kyle Shanahan takes a risk on a player, remember, he didn't want Jimmy G. That was a risk on him, right?
One of Kirk Cousins.
And John Lynch, one of Kirk Cousins. Took a risk on Jimmy, won a ton of games here, then was like, I want to make a change. I want to kind of find my quarterback. Then makes a big risk for Trey Lance. Then is like, okay, got to find my quarterback again, and that's Brock Purdy. Him going out and getting Sam Darnold feels like him saying, I took a big risk and I missed. I need to play it safe again.
But playing it safe, I mean, yeah, it was a risk to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, but Garoppolo had always proven to be the safe quarterback.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. But like trading a second-round pick for Jimmy, that's a risk for a guy you don't know, a guy who hasn't played much, a guy you're kind of banking on Belichick saying he's the successor to Tom Brady, right? You're hoping that works out. At the end, you didn't get the big one. took a risk. You can argue there was a whiff there when it came to getting a championship with this team. Trey Lance, take a big risk. He ain't done anything for being here. You're playing it safe now with the quarterback room. Do you think he's kind of reeling it back in, saying, I took big risks and now I got to play it a lot safer because, well, the safer guys are the guys I like more?
Maybe. I mean, there's certainly a thought that the Niners, with the talent on their roster, they are maybe the only team in the NFL that can win a Super Bowl without an elite of the elite quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, they might be the only team that has that claim. I don't know what 49er fans think. Let's go to some of you. Paul, I see you on hold. You're coming up in just a little bit. First, though, Steve in San Francisco wants to talk about... Maybe. We'll see. Steve, is that you? Wants to talk about Sam Darnold. Steve, you're on overtime on 95.7 The Game. What did you think of Sam Darnold and company today?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Wow, you actually hit on a lot of things that I was going to just reiterate right as we cut to my call. I think a lot of it, there's so many different ways that you can slice this, but at the end of the day, it feels really, really simple, right? Like you hit on the same thing. Sam Darnold, if they told us everything they know in the building or what they think of Trey Lance when they immediately jumped out to get Sam Darnold. And then a lot of us speculate, and they go, well, why would you do that? Sam Darnold, this, or this. And I think you said the exact same thing. You made the comparison to Alex Smith, which I think is apt. But then by the same token, you go, well, but could Sam Darnold beat the Saints in a thriller in a playoff game? Would we have ever said that about Alex Smith until he did that? Absolutely not.
Good point.
So I'm agreeing with you and wholeheartedly where I go, I think they see a lot of that. I think they know that they don't have to change the offense when Darnold is in. I think the things that Darnold is good at are what they need in the quarterback spot, which is what Purdy is. They need quick release. They need smart decisions. And sadly, what I think with Lance, and this is through no fault of his own, you're seeing he takes a lot of time in that pocket. He's doing those double and triple clutches. He's doing a lot of those things that I think like he needs he may have time to work on that throughout his professional career. He's just not in the situation, and they are not in the situation for each other. It's just not compatible anymore. So I'm like, even for this guy, he needs to get out. He kind of needed more of like a Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields sort of team and situation. He needed to go through those growing pains. Between injury and the fact that they're on a win now roster, he was never afforded that. And I think now they kind of know what they have in him and what they don't. And I think they've signaled everything that they're just like, for both parties, I think it's time that we move on from this. I just don't know if they can, because I think they want to try and drive up his trade value. And for better or for worse, the more playing time they give him, if he plays well, maybe they'll drive that up. If he keeps looking like he has, they're just going to have to kind of stick with him and then say, maybe slug it out and see if you can win over Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a balancing act. Good call there, Steve. Steve in San Francisco.
He gets it.
He does get it. I mean, there's a balancing act where you want to, if the 49ers' goal is to try to trade Trey Lance, which I don't think it is.
Me neither.
But if that's their goal, obviously
it's not working.
His stock is at a maybe as low as it's ever been. So you feel like you have to get him out there and see what he can do.
Play the third quarter, Trey. Get out there.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Kyle Shanahan being like, hey, well, your stock just went down a little bit more. You're under $1 now. You're delisted from the New York Stock Exchange.
They got to get that 5th round pick. Oh, man.
And maybe that's the motivation for the 49ers, is they see that he's struggling, and if they're going to recoup anything from, again, spending 3 first-round picks to get this guy, they need him to go out there and do something. Now, I'll say I don't think that that's their plan. I would bet that he's on the roster come week 1, probably, as it stands right now, as QB3.
Yeah.
Who knows? Probably not active for week 1 because you're only going to dress 2 quarterbacks.
Are you, though? Especially after last year.
Maybe, I don't know. Well, I guess there's the new rule now, right? You can dress 3 and they're not going to count against your roster spot. But I don't know.
Can I just say this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Me and you like Trey Lance.
I love Trey Lance.
All right, it's a little more emotional than I was about it. But
I really like Trey Lance. He's a great person.
Yes, Trey Lance, phenomenal person. Everyone, me and you are rooting for him to succeed.
100%.
After today, it was hard for us to watch. We're both sitting there saying, we want him to go out there and prove his worth, prove to be a first-round pick, number 3 overall pick, prove to be that guy
prove
to us.
That I'm right to believe in you. Come on.
Justify my opinion, please. But for him to come out here and do what he did today, we aren't losing faith in the fact that Trey Lance can't be something later. The fact is, like Steve said, he was brought into a win-now situation. Trey Lance wasn't afforded the opportunity to grow as a player, to get those reps like he would have in Jacksonville or in New York or even in Tampa Bay now. Like, he doesn't have that luxury. He has to come in and show to be a good quarterback now. And I think for him, and the text line said at 707, Jordan Love, that's the guy, right? That's where their careers are kind of paralleled currently. The issue is Jordan Love doesn't get to sit behind Aaron Rodgers and never play, and no one's sitting there saying, someone put in Jordan Love. They're saying, can we extend Aaron Rodgers and get him off the ayahuasca, please? Get him out of the closet in his dark room retreats, please. Now Jordan Love, who they extended for a year because they want to see what he can be, he's showing to at least be a leader in that room. Has put together a pretty good preseason, albeit it's one game. He's getting guys to buy into him. Trey Lance has never had the opportunity to do that. It's never been, let's give Trey time to get guys to buy into him. It's, we got to win the Super Bowl right now. And Trey's like, I haven't even thrown a pass yet. Yeah. My leg is broken. My ankle is broken. My finger's broken. And that's the way the NFL goes. Sometimes things pass you by, but despite everything bad that's happened towards Trey Lance in a bad day today, we're not rooting against him.
Absolutely.
We want him to be quarterback 2, if not quarterback 1 here, because the ceiling is the highest of anybody in that room. The issue is that floor might just be the lowest.
It might be. Wide range of outcomes, possibly for Trey Lance. Yeah, let's go back to the phones here. 888-957-9570. You're listening to Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett with you. Up next, Paul in San Jose. Paul, what did you think of the Niners' first preseason game today?
Hey, guys. I had 2 things I wanted to say. First of all, was God forbid anybody on the 49ers starting line goes down this season because,
agree.
Holy hell, these guys were rough. And, you know, we have an issue with protecting our quarterbacks. It's just, man, the depth there, it is not promising. And the second thing I wanted to say was our last 2 first-round picks, man, they are not trending in the right direction. It might be fair to label bust on them. First, with Javon Kinlaw, he was out there today. He had no presence there. He was getting thrown around. We drafted him to be an anchor on the defensive line, man. He's had a bunch of excuses. Maybe he's been out of shape, his knee. Maybe he's just not that good of a player. And for Trey Lance, I understand why the Niners drafted him, because in today's league, today's game, you need that QB, like you were saying. You need that guy to take over the game when it matters, right? I just don't see it from him. He just doesn't seem like the type of QB to run a first-team offense. He looks skittish out there. He doesn't process well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I think we both are in agreement with you, Paul. It just doesn't look clean. It doesn't look like it should look for a guy entering his 3rd year in the league, and we can get into that more, but when the dichotomy of how smooth or how rough it looks for Trey Lance, and then you compare that to how smooth it looked for Sam Darnold, it's jarring. You watch one play for Trey Lance, one play for Sam Darnold, they could both be 15-yard gains, but it feels different because it just seems like it is more straightforward and easy and repeatable for Sam Darnold.
For Trey, it feels like he has to make a hurdle to make a 15-yard throw. Whereas for Sam, it's hike, 3-step drop back, boom, anticipation, sideline.
100%.
And I think for Kyle Shanahan, that's where it's like, can we get Trey to get caught up to speed here of, let's get rid of the hurdles. Let's make things easier. And they've tried. Fix the mechanics. Get rid of the hitch. You know, he went and found Jeff Christensen. Get you the guy that works with the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Yeah. And it's one preseason game, mind you. Maybe it doesn't matter, but nothing he did today showed all the work he's put in. It looked just like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's kind of depressing, really.
It did. It really is. What do you think? Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, did he do enough today to make you confident in him taking snaps for the 49ers this season? What do you think? Let us know. 888-957-9570. RJ and Luis, I see you on hold. We'll get to you right after this quick break. You're listening to Overtime on 95.7 The Game. More reaction to the 49ers loss to the Raiders, 34-7, coming up on the other side. Again, it's Overtime on 95.7 The Game.
We're BMO, the bank coming to California. I know what you're thinking. Oh, great, another big bank. But here's the thing. We're not like any other bank. For one, a BMO debit card gets you more fee-free ATMs than the 2 largest U.S. banks combined.
of a play, didn't get his feet in bounds, and thought Ronnie did some really good things in the return game, had that good jet sweep, made some good passes. Best route was the one he served up to him on the pick, so that was unfortunate, but I thought those guys did show some good things.
Now back to Overtime on 95.7 The Game.
Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett with you here on Overtime as we roll into hour number 3. 1 hour left here on Overtime after the Niners lose to the Raiders 34-7 in their first preseason game of the year. You just heard Kyle Shanahan there talking about Tay Martin and Ronnie Bell. We will get into those guys and some other standouts in just a little bit. We do have a couple of calls we want to get to on the quarterbacks. Up first is Luis in Fremont. Luis, you want to talk about Trey Lance. What did you see today from the 49ers third-year quarterback?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for taking my call.
Of course, Luis.
I'm a first-time caller.
Right on.
And get the censor button ready. I'll try to do this without any cuss words.
Oh.
Craig, stay ready, Craig.
So, anyways, my thoughts are everybody just needs to relax. Trey Lance hasn't really been given a real chance to prove what he can do since he's gotten here. He's gotten injuries and he's just had a run of bad luck. And I also noticed, just watching the game, I mean, I could be wrong, correct me if I am, but the play calling, wasn't really geared towards his strengths. I feel like there was nothing really deep or anything. Like, he's good at scrambling, making that deep pass, which I think was smart to not call those plays because preseason is about working on your weaknesses. And he didn't really know O-line. These guys, they just didn't look good. He didn't really have no running backs, no wide receivers. He didn't really have the tools around him to really look good. I mean, he did do some things with his hitches, and he was, not getting rid of the ball early. But I like Trey Lance. They just need to give him time, which I know this team can't afford that right now. But I think he's going to be good once he gets everything going.
All right, hey, Luis, you got through it without swearing, so congratulations. You did a great job there. We talked about this a little bit earlier. The play calling didn't really stand out to me. I think there's maybe a case to be made that Kyle Shanahan isn't going to call plays like a regular season game. He's not going out there and saying, we need to score a touchdown this drive. He's not pulling out all the stops. I'm not sure play calling was a factor in terms of he put his quarterback in a bad spot or anything. But if this was a game where you're trying to actually win, play calling probably looks a little bit different, but he's not out there trying to purposefully hurt any quarterback that's out there.
I don't think anyone can point to the play calling and say it was different with any of the quarterbacks that played today. And I think because of that, that's why you can point to and say one quarterback played better than the other one, because it was nearly the exact same play calling.
Yeah.
The skill set 2 of the 3 quarterbacks had today fits Kyle Shanahan's offense more than Trey Lance's. And to Luis's point, if he talks about the play calling, how it doesn't fit Trey Lance's strengths, that's on Trey Lance. And that's on Kyle Shanahan for drafting Trey Lance. Because if Trey Lance in year 3, his strengths aren't what Kyle Shanahan wants or needs him to be, that's on those 2 parties. Because you're not going to play if that's the case. If you can't complete a quick out or a 15-yard slant or a crossover with a guy in front of him in a small window, you're not going to play in this offense. Jimmy Garoppolo was not the most accurate player. He wasn't the best quarterback. Kyle Shanahan called him 15th best quarterback in the NFL. But what was he? On time. Trey Lance is not on time. Sam Darnold is more on time than Trey Lance. And the more he plays in the offense, the more he learns and gains experience with Kyle Shanahan, the more on time he'll be. He's played 1 preseason game and already looks more on time than Trey Lance.
Yeah, he does. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it does feel. Let's go to the source, though. Kyle Shanahan asked post-game about his play calling for the quarterbacks, and here's what he had to say.
When you go 3 and out, unless you're running it 3 times in a row, the numbers will get skewed. So you're always throwing on the 3rd down for the most part. So I think it got like that, and it's just usually when you don't play a game, it doesn't balance out. So kind of just how it went. It wasn't the plan.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle Shanahan. It's kind of, you're forced into that position when the offense, even if it is a preseason game where you don't really care about the result, obviously you prefer to win rather than lose. But if you're not getting yards on 1st and 2nd down, you're going to throw it every 3rd down You're behind the sticks. You're going to throw the ball more. And even with that, even with the 3 and outs early for Trey Lance, really, I mean, you talked about it earlier, the throws in the first half versus in the second half when Darnold and Allen split duties, I mean, it was the same. 15 pass attempts in the first half, 16 in the second half. There really wasn't some inequality here.
No, and look, that's not all on Trey Lance as to why plays weren't made in the first half. Offensive line played really bad. Running backs couldn't find holes. It felt like they were running into each other, play in, play out. And so for Trey, yes, his maybe offensive line, his receivers not getting open. Like, it's not just on Trey Lance. But because of the entire offense faltering, it leads Trey Lance to have to make plays to extend drives, and he didn't do that. Whereas a veteran quarterback like Sam Darnold, a player like Jimmy Garoppolo, and like last year, Brock Purdy, they've shown they can do that stuff. And for Trey in year 3 to not be able to do that yet, and I get it, Debo didn't play, Kittle, Ayuk, McCaffrey, those things will get easier when you have better players out there. We saw this team put up 45 points against Washington in the second half alone. Like, yes, starting team didn't play, I get that stuff, but it doesn't take away the inefficiencies of Trey Lance.
Yeah, I agree. We got another call here. RJ in Sunnyvale wants to talk about Trey Lance. You can also join in, get in line, 888-957-9570. That is also the Xfinity mobile text line. Let us know your thoughts on YouTube and Twitch as well. But up first, RJ in Sunnyvale. You want to talk about Trey. RJ, what'd you see today?
Yeah, guys, I was actually watching a game with some of my friends who are Raider fans, and they asked a question. They were like, you got to ask this question, because I don't know what the Raiders quarterback's name was, the dude who played like the first 3 quarters.
Aiden O'Connell.
I think like he like 4th round pick. He looked way more comfortable to me than Trey Lance. I mean, he's a rookie, so I'm not sure what that says about Trey Lance, but I mean, I think that like anybody who watched the game could probably see that this dude looked way more comfortable in the pocket, just seemed like a better player than Trey Lance.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly looked more comfortable. He had a better day. He was more consistent. He made, I think, nicer throws on a consistent basis. He looked pretty good. I mean, it was kind of similar, Sterling, you're listening to Overtime here on 95.7 The Game. It was kind of reminiscent of when the Niners played the Raiders in the regular season at the end of last year. Remember Jarrett Stidham? Man. He looked like a MVP, how he was throwing the ball around at Allegiant Stadium against the Niners in the regular season. And that was, of course, against the Niners' first-string defense, which was elite, one of, if not the best teams in the NFL. Doesn't really have any bearing on what happened today. But just a relative unknown who comes in and plays really well. I was really impressed by Aiden O'Connell. 100%. He was more impressive today than Trey Lance. It could change in a week. It could change in a couple of weeks. We don't know. But just today, Trey Lance, of the quarterbacks that got a legitimate time today, he's not near the top.
Now, to be fair to Aiden O'Connell, he had a lot of time to throw. And True. San Francisco secondary was playing off a lot of receivers. Not sure why that was the case. Even starters like Isaiah Oliver got beat for a touchdown, which he didn't have a great debut in the red and gold. So there are some discrepancies and nuances you can point to and say, well, Aiden O'Connell had 5 seconds in the pocket. Trey had 2. That may have leaned heavily in favoring O'Connell.
Raiders team-wide played better than Niners team-wide.
By far.
It's not just the quarterback position.
Right. And so to point to O'Connell and say, well, what was the excuse of why did he play so well? Well, put O'Connell on San Francisco. He doesn't evade 1 sack. Maybe it's 6 sacks instead of 4 sacks. And so it's tough to kind of point to and go, well, that guy played better than this guy because of this, and the other. But I think for Trey, if you flip the positioning, he plays much better. Like we saw him with the clean pocket make a perfect throw to Conley downfield on the crosser. We see him hit Fumagalli for 8 yards, run for 7 more. Like we saw Trey albeit in 10 of his completed passes, should have been 9 really, but we did see small glimpses, but the small glimpses have always been small. And it's not like Trey isn't the pocket passer. It's not like Trey doesn't have the ability. That's why he was drafted. You can do things in the pocket Kyle Shanahan wants, and you can also do a little extra on the outside. And for Trey to come in here and put that performance together and struggle in the pocket, that's what's concerning. He struggled in the pocket, whether it broke down or he was getting chased around back there.
Yeah, it just generally looked uncertain, unsure of himself, what to do at any given moment. It was not encouraging, that's for sure. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Raiders beat the Niners 34-7. Final score doesn't really matter all that much, but not a clean performance from Trey Lance. We spent the first 2+ hours talking about the quarterbacks, specifically Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. We'll keep taking your calls on that. If you want to weigh in, 888-957-9570. That is also the Xfinity mobile text line. Hit us up on YouTube, youtube.com/957thegame, twitch.tv/957thegame. But let's turn our attention to non-quarterbacks here for just a little bit, Sterling, because there were some standouts, both offensively and defensively. I wouldn't say there was someone who had an incredible day and was perfect. But there were flashes. A name that we've thrown out a couple of times, Ronnie Bell, freshman out of Michigan, late pick, who might make the team on the count of Ray McCloud being injured, and Ronnie Bell may be this team's punt and kick returner. We can talk about that position battle as well. But I thought he flashed as a receiver today. He also had an end around for 15 yards. But Ronnie Bell, 3 catches for 37 yards, was targeted 6 times. He had 1 bounce off his hands. You heard Kyle Shanahan talk about it just a little bit ago. That turned into an interception. But if you were to ask me who stood out to you, who were you most maybe surprised or impressed by, other than the quarterbacks, Ronnie Bell, to me, looks like he could make this team not necessarily as a returner, but as a straight-up wide receiver as well.
That 5th or 6th receiver job's wide open.
Wide open. There's like 4 guys that it could go to.
And for Ronnie Bell to come in and he led this team in receiving yards today, had the most yards per attempt when it came to per catch. He had the biggest play of the day on the other half of a Sam Darnold 37-yard throw. Targeted the most of anybody on the team. Ronnie Bell today was the best receiver on the field in red and gold. And for a young player to come in and there's a little pressure on him. He may not make this team. I know Trey Lance said there's no pressure on him or he didn't feel pressure. I think Ronnie Bell feels that pressure of I'm a young player. I want to come in, I want to prove myself, and I want to show that in training camp the drops were an issue for him. He had 1 drop today, but even Kyle Shanahan said that was your best route, right? And so for him, where maybe he's 1 negative of the day, kind of is a net positive in Shanahan's eyes, that's real confidence in Ronnie Bell. I think he showed there was 1 play on a comeback or in the bubble of the defense, right in his hands, got hit pretty hard and came down with the catch. There was a lot of good things to see from Ronnie Bell, route running very crisp in camp, very crisp today on behalf of the Michigan rookie. And so I think for Ronnie Bell, for him to show kind of being a good receiver, but also having the ability to go and play running back, basically, to get balls in the backfield for 15 yards, break off a few tackles, and fight for a first down. That's stuff Kyle Shanahan really likes. You want to fight for every single yard as a rookie. Shanahan sees that and goes, I like that. Yeah, and look, I mean, he could make this team. If I were betting now, I'd probably bet yes, he does make the team at some point. But if he does make the team, he's not going to see the field too often as a wide receiver. Even with Ray McCloud out for probably around the first 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season. But where he can have consistent action and have a consistent role is on special teams, because without Ray McCloud, now the punt return and the kick return job is wide open, and Ronnie Bell took every return in the first half. Maybe shouldn't have, but Deshaun Jameson in the second half, we can talk about him as well. He stood out as a return man. Unfortunately, 3 of his good returns were called back because of penalty, but he still looked really good. Ronnie Bell did not really shine in my mind as a kick or a punt returner, but where, if he makes the team, you would likely see him is that position, special teams, and specifically kick and punt return, because the Niners have a giant hole there now without Ray McCloud, who I think kind of like a center or a long snapper in the NFL. If you don't hear about them, generally it's because they're doing a good job. Like the second they mess up, everyone is pissed off. It's similar for like a kick returner and a punt returner. Kyle Williams. I mean, a decade later, more than a decade later, that still is. I mean, there are probably Niner fans driving home right now, but why the hell did you punching the steering wheel? Why would you say his name?
Why would you bring up his name? But yeah, that's exactly the point. You don't really get the credit that you deserve because you're just expected to go out there, not put the ball on the ground. If you get 10 yards, if you get 5 yards, whatever. Ray McCloud was fantastic in that role last year, and now without him, at least for the first maybe month of the year, there's a gigantic opening there. Ronnie Bell maybe taking that role. Deshaun Jameson looked really good. There were a couple of other options as well, but it seems like, at least according to how Kyle Shanahan divvied up the snaps today, might be between Ronnie Bell and Deshaun Jameson.
Kyle Shanahan and the Niners last year made it a point to go out and improved the special teams. They brought in George Odom, a safety who was I believe, an all-pro special teams player. Oren Burks brought in as a linebacker, and Ray McLeod brought in to be that return specialist to kind of shore up that spot for this team who wanted to gain better field position on punts and kicks. And with him being out, there is this massive hole of, okay, who's going to step up? And then Ronnie Bell and Jamison, they're going to get the brunt of these opportunities. Danny Gray couldn't play today because he was sore, so maybe that's someone else thrown into the mix that we haven't seen yet. But I think Ronnie Bell, you can tell he wanted to make the most of every single time he touched the football. And Ronnie, put your hands up and call a fair catch every once in a while. Please don't get run through by a defender. But Deshaun Jamison, I think far and away, at least in one game, he looked like he was poised when defenders in his face. He looked very patient in how he ran with the football, waiting for holes to open up for him to explode through. What do you have? 37 yards on kicks on 2 opportunities, a pretty big 20-yard punt that was called back on a penalty. So if there was a leader in the race for kick return, punt return guy, I would lean toward Jamison. But if Ronnie Bell can find a role of being versatile, I can do end arounds, I can catch the football, I can also do punts and kicks. That's going to be a really easy decision for Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I agree. And we got a comment on the YouTube chat. Enrique Rivera asking, when was the last Niner to return a touchdown in the regular season? Didn't specify kick or punt return.
Wow.
I have the answer. Do you want to take a guess? Let's start with kickoff return. When was the last time the San Francisco 49ers returned a kickoff for a touchdown?
I don't know if this was a preseason game, but part of me wants to say Allen Rossum.
Who the hell is that?
He used to be a Falcons cornerback, was brought in during the pre-Jim Harbaugh era in San Francisco.
Okay, so we're talking like 2010 or
2009,
8 or 9 or 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so the most recent kickoff return for a touchdown was the 2018 season when the Niners, the 4-10 Niners, beat the 8-6 Seattle Seahawks 26-23 in the first quarter. Richie James Jr., a 97-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Now, if you ask, when was the last time the Niners had a punt return for a touchdown? Ooh. Do you have any inkling on that one? The answer is the guy you'd expect.
Interesting.
It's Ted Ginn Jr., who's probably the last great Niners punt and kick returner.
My mind said Arnaz Battle.
That's a name I do recognize. But Ted Ginn Jr. in 2011, the Niners beat the Seahawks to start the season. That was week 1, 33-17. Man. Ted Ginn in the fourth quarter, believe it or not, took a 19-17 Niners lead and turned it into a 33-17 win by having a 102-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and then later in the same quarter, a 55-yard punt return for a touchdown.
You could say he's the GOAT.
One of them, Devin Hester.
At least Niners kick returners in the last decade and a half.
So all of that just tells you the Niners haven't really had a consistent...
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you return it to the crib. That's a big deal. But you just don't want to fumble it. If you can gain 15 yards on a punt return, if you can get out to the 30 or 35-yard line on a kick return, that's a big deal. You don't need to take it to the house for you to be a good punt
Just get your guys 5 extra yards,
100%.
10 extra yards.
But the point still stands. The Niners haven't really had that consistent guy for a while. Ray was that guy last year.
Yeah.
He was really good in that role. Even just calling for a fair catch and not fumbling it, that's better than doing nothing else. So that's going to be an important role early in the season. It's something they haven't really had. They did it last year. They're not going to have it to start this season. So that's certainly an area to keep an eye on as the preseason continues.
Can I tell you one player I was displeased with today? And I hate being so negative.
Go ahead. Tell me.
Cameron Latu, this young man out of Alabama, tight end, a defensive transitional player to tight end, his 5th year at Alabama last year. Plays well enough to be a 3rd-round pick by San Francisco. Many draft pundits have him as like a 6th-round talent. San Francisco says, no, 3rd-round pick. He's dropped like 75 passes in training camp. He fumbled today.
Hey, but he didn't drop one today. He caught the only target, right?
Then he dropped it after the play and fumbled it. And Tay Martin's like, the play's over, walking off the field. And everyone's like, pick up the ball, Tay. Your name is Big Play Tay, and you're letting big plays go off the field. And so for Cam Latu, look, he's a really nice person. He came in, he addressed the drops in a post-practice press conference, said, that's on me. You can tell for a young player, he's in his head. Even when he made a nice catch, leaned backwards, caught the pass behind him, runs 5 yards, trying to fight for an extra 6 yards. Ball pops out, and you're just like, get him off the field. Cam, You're a third-round pick, and you should get cut. Like, you have been the worst tight end on the practice field, and you're making turnover-worthy plays.
What makes this conversation interesting, it's what the Niners do at the tight end position on the 53-man roster, because you mentioned Cam Latu, a third-round pick. Niners' first pick was in the third round. They had multiple picks in the third round. They traded up to get Jair Brown, the safety of Penn State. We can talk about him coming up in the next segment if you want, but we don't have to. He didn't do anything special today.
Talk about your Jared Goff MVP talk again.
I'll defend that if you really want me to. Liar! It's not a lie. He's going to be great. Just watch. But I think the tight end position is really interesting for the 49ers because you have Cam Latu, third-round pick. Part of me feels like Kyle Shanahan almost feels like he has to make the roster.
Yeah.
Because you spent a lot of draft capital on him. Now, if he was a seventh-round pick, you'd
Braden
have
Willis.
Yeah, Braden Willis, who's been better by all accounts, at least in training camp, didn't get a lot of run. He did have one target, one catch for 5 yards today. Latu had one catch for 9 yards, but he did that. He fumbled, and it was turned into a touchdown pretty quickly by the Raiders. The Niners are at a position in the tight end group where you obviously have George Kittle, and then you just have like 4 question marks behind him.
Yeah.
You have Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelley, who've been on this roster in the past. They're known commodities. They're nothing special, but they filled in here and there. Dwelley's more of the pass catcher. Warner is more of the blocker. Obviously, Kittle can do both. And then you have your rookies. Latu, a third-round pick. Braden Willis, seventh-round pick. You're not keeping all of them. You're keeping 3.
Right.
And you're already at a disadvantage in terms of your 53-man roster because you have to carry Ray McCloud on the 53-man roster because you're not going to cut him. He's going to get picked up by someone else, even if he's injured. You have to keep him on the 53-man. Then you place him on IR or PUP or whatever list you put him on after you cut down to 53. So the question becomes, you're losing one roster spot there. Where are you getting another roster spot back to make up for everyone else? And these tight ends are going to be kind of on a razor's edge figuring out who makes the team because you have 2 draft picks, one of them who was a high draft pick who you almost feel like has to make the team by default because if you cut a third-round pick, that's just a bad look for Kyle Shanahan. So I'm really, really eager to see how the tight end position plays out because Latu has had such a bad camp. 7th-round pick Willis has had a really good camp, and we know the shortcomings of the other 2 guys.
I kind of hope Kyle Shanahan utilizes or views the tight end room like he should view the quarterback room and just pick the best player and play him. Whether it's Trey or Sam or Purdy, just pick the best 2. Pick the best 3. I don't care. Just pick the best player so we can go out there and get our 6th championship.
You're not happy with the politics of draft picks.
I don't care. Be like the Raiders and cut your first-round pick the next year. I get careless. Mike Mayock and John Gruden doing dumb things over there in Oakland when they were still here in Las Vegas later. But for Cam Latu, and really for Braden Willis as well, it's which one of those 4 guys can alleviate George Kittle in any part of the offense? Yep. Can they block well? Can they be a good receiver in the red zone? How can you make George Kittle more explosive in the offense, and how can you make his life easier for him to allow Kyle Shanahan to make more big plays? We saw last year, Brock Purdy and George Kittle had 4 games of 2 touchdown games back to back to back. They're amazing. The chemistry was off the charts for those 2, and so I would assume Kyle Shanahan wants to revisit that coming this year. And for these 2 young players, Latu and Willis, are you going to be a blocking tight end? Are you going to be a receiving tight end? I don't care where you were picked. If you're not good and you're not ready, you shouldn't be on the team.
I like to think that way too. I'm just not sure if Kyle Shanahan can swallow that. We will see. Hopefully Cam Latu can put together a better 2nd and 3rd preseason games. We'll keep an eye on that, of course. We got to hit a quick break here on Overtime. We'll continue talking other standouts from the Niners preseason game. Again, a loss to the Raiders, 34-7. And we're still here for you if you want to get off your thoughts about Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and company. We'll take your calls, 888-957-9570. One more segment of Overtime left here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy, Sterling Bennett, Craig Valentino coming back with you right after this. Overtime continues next on 95.7 The Game.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising. It's not online, and it's not the warehouse clubs. The best deals on top-rated TVs.
Now back to Overtime on 95.7 The Game.
Overtime continues here on 95.7 The Game. Mark, Randy, Sterling, Bennett with you. You just heard there, that was Jason Horowitz calling Trey Lance's touchdown pass, in air quotes. Should have been an interception. It was caught in the end zone by Ross Dwelly, Niners' only touchdown of the game. They fall to the Raiders 34-7 in preseason game number 1. We've spent a lot of time talking about the quarterbacks. Cliff notes, Trey Lance did not look all that good. Sam Darnold wasn't bad, wasn't great, but had some good moments. 5 of 8 passing. Brandon Allen got into the fourth quarter, also 5 of 8. If you want to talk quarterbacks, we'll still take your calls on it. 888-957-9570. You can also let us know what you think on the Xfinity mobile text line. Same number, 888-957-9570. Or check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/957thegame, twitch.tv/957thegame as well. Sterling, we got 25 minutes left here on the first edition of Overtime. You can tune in after every single Niners game, preseason, regular season, postseason. Hopefully there's a handful of them in the postseason. Overtime, right when the game ends, flip over to 95.7 The Game for hours of Niners content just like today. Should be the start of a really fun season. But let's continue talking about some non-quarterbacks. We just talked about the wide receiver room, kick return, punt return room. Ronnie Bell doing some good things today. Let's transition to the defense a little bit. We also get to the kicker, Jake Moody, as well. The defense for me, maybe the biggest takeaway, obviously you're not playing your starters. We had a caller talk.
We had one starter play today.
That's the one guy I want to talk about.
Oh, he was teasing. I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't do that on purpose, actually. I forgot. So,
what a segue.
There you go. Nickel corner. The Niners, basically, it's their base defense where you have 5 defensive backs out there, 2 normal corners, 2 safeties, and your nickel corner. Last year was played by Jimmy Ward, and he was fantastic at it, despite the fact that it was not his normal position. He played phenomenal at that. The Niners lost him this offseason. He signed with the Texans to join DeMeco Ryans, his former defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach over there in Houston. And the Niners, the move they made in response to that was to acquire Isaiah Oliver, who was most recently with the Falcons last year. In fact, picked off Jimmy Garoppolo in that loss for the Niners to the Falcons last season in Atlanta. He's your most likely starting nickel corner, and he played in this game. Sterling, I don't know how you feel, but he didn't look that good.
And it's surprising, too, because his build of being kind of a bigger, long-armed nickel cornerback, you would think he would have a better capability of being in coverage and being able to hold down a bigger slot receiver. But for Isaiah Oliver today, he kind of looked, I'm not sure if he was lost in the defense, but he seemed like something was out of sorts of miscommunication, but let go of a pretty wide open touchdown pass where I think he was supposed to have safety help behind him, but in his first game, his first debut game in San Francisco, not the performance you want to put on display for the first time your fan base gets to see you, but he's been really good in camp, locking down guys like George Kittle, being really sticky in coverage against players like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. So I'm not sure if because he was playing with second team really today, that maybe that's what threw him off. But let's be honest here, Samuel Womack and Ambry Thomas, kind of guys who are kind of on the outs when it comes to playing cornerback on this team right now, and a bunch of younger guys, Taylor Hawkins and Jair Brown playing safety. So I wouldn't put too much into Oliver's debut, but behind him, they don't have a backup nickel cornerback. If he fails and isn't that good this year, that's what concerns me the most.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the official backup would be if you had to pick someone, you'd pick A.J. Parker.
Yeah.
And who is A.J. Parker, right? I mean, he's
an NPC.
I'm pretty confident that's the first time that A.J. Parker's name has ever been uttered on 95.7 The Game.
As it should.
As it should. So nothing against him.
Never say it again.
He could have a fantastic career, but he is a gigantic unknown. And if he is playing consistent snaps, if he happens to be a starter, if he's a fill-in guy, if there's an injury or whatever, or the guy playing ahead of him, Isaiah Oliver, doesn't play well and he has to come in, probably not going to go great for the 49ers. So if I were to pick maybe one spot of the defense where after watching one preseason game I am most worried about, it's that fifth corner, or the third corner, the fifth defensive back, the nickel corner spot. Jimmy Ward last year was fantastic in that role. Your other corners are really exclusively outside guys. Obviously, Charvarius Ward, Mooney Ward, fantastic. Diamador Lenore, likely the other starter. Ambry Thomas, backup. Samuel Womack, backup corner as well. They're not really slot guys. They're not nickel guys. So you just don't have anyone that you feel super confident in playing in that position if Isaiah Oliver does not pan out.
What's kind of annoying, too, because San Francisco's made it a point to be deep at so many other positions. Defensive line on the edge, quarterback, receiver, running back. And maybe you move Samuel Womack back inside. Keep in mind he did start, I believe, 2 or 3 games last year when Jimmy Ward was on the shelf early in the year, then got hurt again against Carolina. But he got benched, and so he wasn't good enough. And he was replaced by Lenore early last season, so maybe you move him back inside, but he has been playing outside the entirety of training camp, and it doesn't seem like that's a plan at all for them. And I would assume they want to keep 6 cornerbacks. You want to keep your starters, Lenore, Mooney Ward, and Oliver, and you want to keep guys like Thomas and Womack. And I would assume Deshaun Jameson is that 6th guy, return specialist, also can be another outside corner for you. But if you don't have a backup nickel cornerback, you're going to find yourself in a situation, whether Oliver goes down or he's just really bad, you may be playing more 3 safety sets, and I don't feel confident in doing that right now, knowing Jair Brown's rookie and he's really young. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but you may have to go find somebody else, because if AJ Parker, if his name is said on this station over and over and over again throughout the year, I'm assuming it's going to be in a negative light, not in a positive one. So 1 preseason game, but if there's an area of concern, I think it might be the depth, that nickel cornerback.
100%. And I think if you were to ask me, maybe at the beginning of the offseason, what would be the ideal way that the defensive backfield shakes out, specifically the cornerback room, something you brought up, Diamador Lenore has played that nickel spot a little bit in the past, Samuel Womack as well, but maybe it would be Ambry Thomas has a fantastic offseason, and you feel comfortable with him being your starting corner opposite Charvarius Ward, and that allows you to move Diamador Lenore or Womack or whoever it is, most likely in Lenore, because he has the most experience and has proven to be better than Womack at this point. That would allow you to slide Lenore maybe back to the nickel spot, but you haven't really seen that from Ambry Thomas either, who made a couple of nice plays today, had a nice pass breakup down the middle, but also was beaten a couple of times as well. So I don't think the Niners feel comfortable with Ambry Thomas being a starting corner opposite of Mooney Ward, and that just means that I think kind of by default that spot is Lenore's, which means the nickel corner spot is still wide open. Yeah,
with Ambry Thomas, he has been getting a lot of first-team reps in training camp and practice, and it does feel like that Steve Wilks is kind of that breath of fresh air he needed as a defensive coordinator. I think they're trying to test him to see what he can be. That are you going to step up to the challenge and make changes? Kyle Shanahan said he has his mind right and his body's right. The offseason he had has been really good in their eyes, but maybe there is a situation where Oliver plays bad or just gets hurt. That what seems to be a common occurrence here in San Francisco for their starters, and they have to move somebody inside. I might elect to put Womack in there initially, depending on how Lenore plays, because I have a lot of high hopes for Mooney Ward and Lenore coming into this year. Both of them, Mooney Ward said he wants to be an All-Pro. Lenore looks like an All-Pro in training camp, and so if you can have 2 shutdown outside guys, so what if Cooper Kupp gets 10 catches for 120 yards? If no one else hurts you, not that big of a deal.
You can live with it.
Exactly, and so for this year, again, you don't want to say A.J. Parker, but I do think they have a little bit of flexibility. We just haven't seen that really shown to us since Steve Wilks has been here, with Thomas being outside, Womack playing outside, and Jameson also playing outside.
Yeah. A little less than 15 minutes left here on Overtime today. 888-957-9570. Let us know what you think about anything Niners related today. Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, or something that we're talking about right now, the Niners defensive secondary. Let's go right now, though, to Matt in San Rafael, who wants to talk a little bit about what we're talking about right now and perhaps some stuff about the quarterbacks as well. Matt, you're on Overtime on 95.7 The Game with Mark Randy and Sterling Bennett. What's up?
Hey, guys. You just...
Uh-oh, Matt, we have you? Dang it, Matt, you cut out there. Give us a call back and we'll get you back on the air. Unfortunately, Matt's cell phone did not cooperate with him.
Thought it wasn't Hegan for a second. I was like, oh, Matt, boss is calling.
Uh-oh. But yeah, that's certainly an issue for the 49ers. And the next preseason games, the next practices as well, we'll be keeping an eye on nickel corner because Isaiah Oliver, just based on the depth that they have and the lack of other options, he might be one of the most important players for the Niners this year because you just don't have replacement level guys behind him. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. Let's talk a little bit about Jake Moody.
Yes! I've been waiting for 2.5 hours.
And 45 minutes later. Let's talk Jake Moody. Niners picked him early in the draft, and the whole talk all offseason has been he better work out. Because if he doesn't, Kyle Shanahan, Niner fans are going to come for your head. And his first introducing himself to Niners fans in competitive game action, he misses 2 field goals. Now, one was 57 yards at the end of the first half. That was very deep. Not going to hold his feet to the fire for that one. Not bad. You miss a 57-yarder, whatever. But he also missed another one from 40 yards?
48, I believe.
48 yards?
43, excuse
43 yards.
I cannot read.
3 in the 8.
Yeah, it's close.
They kind of look similar.
It's 2 threes together.
Exactly. That's not great. I'm not saying that I think he's going to be bad and it's going to be a failed project decision by the 49ers, but you would just love nothing more than to not have to answer questions about your kicker that you just drafted high early in the preseason. Nightmare for Kyle Shanahan, because if these issues continue, I feel like I should say Jake Moody has been phenomenal all camp. He's been making everything.
64 yards.
Making everything, but his first game action on television, introducing himself to Niner fans, he misses both of his kicks. That's scary.
Knowing Jake Moody is, I believe, the 3rd highest drafted kicker since 2005.
He's got to work out.
Mike Nugent, Robert Aguayo, and...
Don't say Robert Aguayo out loud ever again. That name.
Robert Aguayo. After seeing how bad the second-team offensive line played today, looking at you, Matt Pryor, looking at you, Nick Zakel, knowing whether it was Cam Latu or Jake Moody, one of these picks could have been a backup tackle, could have been a backup guard. If Jake Moody becomes a perennial kick misser, and he's missing 43 yards and 57 yards, you're going to find yourself in a point where it's like, you can't get the quarterback right, you can get tight ends right, you can get kickers right. What is wrong with the 3rd round Kyle Shanahan? But I do want to give fans kind of some optimism here. Justin Tucker, future Pro Bowler, or probably future Hall of Famer.
Current and future Pro Bowler.
He was 4 for 8 in his first preseason. Now, arguably, if not the best, one of the best kickers of all time.
Look at you going back through the history books.
Granted, he was an undrafted free agent, not a 3rd-round pick, but just to give you some optimism that Jake Moody's first example of what he's supposed to be able to do, not going well, missing a 43 and 57-yard field goal, may have a negative fan connotation towards him currently, has some outrage at him. I think he'll be just fine.
I think so too. And Otis Bird III on the YouTube chat asking, what about Zane Gonzalez? By all accounts, he hasn't been bad either, right? It's just Jake Moody as your 3rd round pick, the guy you hand selected, the guy you drafted up to acquire. You're not starting anyone over him. Now, maybe things don't work out and he struggles early, but Zane Gonzalez is not going to factor in, at least early. He's not going to make this team.
Unlike Cam Latu, you have to play the draft the draft status card here. But this team wants to trade Zane Gonzalez. Now, if Jake Moody is 0 for 9 come week 1 of the regular season, we're having a different conversation of,
don't bring that up.
Thank goodness Zane Gonzalez is in the building because he's our kicker now, but they want to trade Zane Gonzalez for like a 6th or 7th round pick. Maybe they can package him and Trey Lance somewhere for all we know. But,
but you can't bring that up with 8 minutes to go in the show.
But to be serious, they don't want to keep Zane Gonzalez. They want Jake Moody to be their guy. And when you're kicking 64-yard field goals in practice with room to spare down the middle, I think it's just a first-game jitter. He even said, I'm happy the mistakes are being made now. Come week 1, they'll be ironed out, and we'll be booming things from 65 yards out.
Booming things. Yeah, that's the right answer. And
because kickers always kick so well at Heinz Field, so that should go awesomely well.
We'll see. Hopefully they're not in a position where they need a game-winning kick to win that game. But
maybe they can sign Robert Aguayo, right, Craig?
He's a
bag of groceries somewhere, trust me.
He's
the greatest college kicker of all time, out of the league in 3 years.
He's the Kurt Warner of college kickers. Bring him back up the the conveyor belt. We're going to win a Super Bowl with that guy.
Take him out of a grocery store in the Midwest somewhere, and he'll become a future Hall of Famer. 888-957-9570 is the number. We got less than 10 minutes left here in our first overtime of the season. 888-957-9570. Let's go to Mike in San Francisco. Mike wants to bring us back to the offense and talk about the offensive line. Mike, what did you see in today's 34-7 Niners loss?
Well, I mean, my big question, I like you guys to talk about it, is the offensive line. I think, Lance didn't look that great, and, neither did either of the other quarterbacks for that matter. But it's hard to look good when you got defensive linemen running down your throat. And I thought, Lance was under a lot of pressure in those first few sets. And I just wonder what you're thinking about the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, there's no hiding it, Mike. 100%. The offensive line struggled, especially early. It's unfortunate for Trey Lance that a lot of his drives in the first quarter specifically were kind of marred by, there's no denying it, just terrible offensive line play. The offensive line was better for Sam Darnold, so I think it becomes a little bit more difficult or unfair to draw sweeping conclusions about their performances because of the way the offensive line played. Not saying they were world beaters when Darnold was out there, but it was certainly better than at least the first 3 drives when Trey Lance was out there. It's the backup offensive line. You're not really worried about, as a line, how do they look together as a unit, because they're not going to play as a unit together. But it wasn't really an inspiring game in terms of giving you confidence that any one of those guys can step in. Maybe beside Feliciano, who is probably the most proven of that group, by far the most proven of that group. But the other spot where you don't have a ton of depth, at least proven depth, is the offensive line. And where you get a little worried is if there's an injury, how does the unit hold up? Because as we just saw today, really none of the 5 guys that played for most of the game were all that good today.
Well, don't forget, if Colton McKivitz comes out, unproven right tackle, and he struggles, and you're sitting there saying, Jalen Moore and Matt Pryor, you're going to be our starting right tackle. You're sitting there saying, is anybody else out there? Can someone help us? And I think today, seeing Matt Pryor in practice, very unimpressive performance from him on the field today, but also in practice, just not great. When you're consistently getting beat by second and third team defensive ends, that should raise the warning sign, wee woo, wee woo, Patrick Starr, like, hey, something's going on here. And that was kind of more the same today. I counted 9 pressures against the offensive line when Trey Lance was playing. 4 sacks allowed. Obviously, I think 2 were on Trey. 2 should be on the offensive line. But as a unit, not completely worried. But if McKivitz goes down or isn't that good and you're having to play Jalen Moore and Matt Pryor, you're sitting there saying, okay, we just let our starting right tackle since 2018 go and let him get paid big money. And I get that this team is very much known for letting veteran players go get paid elsewhere, then bringing a rookie up behind him for a few years and supplementing him later. But right now, offensive line starting, not an issue. But if someone goes down here or there and Cam Latu is dropping passes and Jake Moody's missing kicks, we're gonna be sitting there saying, you picked a kicker? Well, we needed a tackle.
They didn't draft a single tackle.
No.
I mean, that's like gigantic vote of confidence for McKivitz, obviously.
They didn't even tell him he was the starting tackle until after the draft.
So I think Colt McKivitz can prove to be a quality right tackle.
Yes.
And the offensive line, when healthy, could be a quality group. We were talking earlier, can they be top 10 group in the NFL?
That left side is strong.
They certainly can be. It's TBD. We don't know just yet. But I think where this conversation, the importance that we don't really talk about a lot is that McKivitz was your swing tackle last year. He was your depth piece. He was the guy, if really anyone went down on the offensive line, maybe aside from center, he was the guy that you were playing.
Yep.
And he wasn't great at that role. I mean, it's a difficult role where you're asked to fill in anywhere, essentially.
He supplemented Trent Williams in 2021, in the final game of the year in Los Angeles and held up.
Yeah. So that's a valuable piece.
Yeah.
The point is, he's now a starter. He could be good. He could be good, and the offensive line, when healthy, could be great. But what did you lose out on? You lose out on having that guy as
your swing tackle.
So where is the depth coming from now? If, say, McKivitz goes down, if Brendel goes down, if Burford goes down, if Banks goes down, God forbid if Trent Williams goes down, who's filling in then? You don't have McKivitz to fall back on anymore. Is it going to be, there's a number of guys that you could point to, but Are you confident in Jalen Moore? You
No.
talked about Matt Pryor, Nick Zakelj.
No.
I mean, you're not confident in any of these guys. So what the 49ers have done is they put all of their eggs in the health basket of their current 5 offensive linemen. And if things go poorly, unless things change based on the reserves, you don't feel confident that you're going to be able to hold up at least over an extended period of time. You could survive a week here, a week there.
Right.
But if there's a serious injury, it might be a little ugly on the offensive lines at times.
Well, don't forget Daniel Brunskill is also gone. He can play tackle and guard. That flexibility is not there at the depth roles on the offensive line. But to bring it full circle back to quarterbacks, we're going like a story. What helps a bad offensive line? Getting the ball out quick, on time.
Quick quarterback.
Jimmy
Consistent.
Garoppolo. When Trent Williams, 2019, who's hurt? Joe Staley and McGlinchey. Jimmy Garoppolo, quick passes over the middle, getting Deebo Samuel the football fast. When Jimmy Garoppolo and the offensive line's banged up and McKivitz is playing left tackle against the Rams on Monday Night Football, what do? Screen passes, dumps off, end arounds. You know who can't do that stuff or shown to be able to do that stuff? Trey Lance. But you know who has been able to do that stuff? Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold.
There it is. Full circle. Wild. I don't know.
I love my shapes.
34-7, the final score. The Raiders beat the 49ers. I personally could not care less about the final score. You focus so much more on individual performances. Some positives to point to. We broke it all down earlier, but I think for the most part, just a bad day for the 49ers. And I think overall, a bad half a week in Las Vegas. I mean, the Raiders outperformed them in the joint practices, and the Raiders obviously outperformed them in the game. The Niners care so much more than just preseason. They have aspirations to win a championship, but there's no denying this was not the best start that they could have asked for in the preseason. We'll see if they do improve moving forward. But I guess just to wrap it up, Sterling, not a very good day for the 49ers.
Could be. Maybe even should be a wake-up call as to maybe how weak this team's depth is at certain positions. Starting roster, starting lineup, they're going to be great. Hargrave's now there. Nick Bosa should be back in a week or so. I think he'll sign soon. You got one of the best offenses in football. Starting lineup, fine. Depth, I don't know.
Starting lineup, elite.
Yes.
The best
Top 5
starting
in football.
lineup, 100%. Niners next preseason game, Saturday, August 19th, so 6 days from now. 5:30, you can catch overtime right after that game here on 95.7 The Game, as always. Shout out all of our listeners. Thank you all for calling in, for letting us know your thoughts on the YouTube chat, on the Xfinity mobile text line, also on Twitch as well. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. Sterling, it was fun. Looking forward to doing it again next time. And hopefully we have a little bit more positive things to talk about the next time the Niners take the field.
We'll see. On to Denver. Broncos country. That's right.
Fingers crossed. Will we see Russell Wilson? We don't know.
Might need to.
We might. All right, that'll do it for overtime here today. Thank you so much for tuning in. For Craig Valentino, for my partner Sterling Bennett, this is Mark Randy signing off. Thanks so much for tuning in. Niners fall in Vegas. On to the next one coming up next weekend. You've been listening to Overtime right here on 95.7 The Game.
The biggest pro football contests in Vegas are back and bigger than ever with $14 million in guaranteed prizes only at Circus Sports. Enter in Nevada, play from anywhere. 2 ways to win and no rake. Play Circa Million. Make 5 picks against the spread.